Chapter 179. Exterminate the bandits? Meng Hun found it hard to believe. Even the government didn't bother to send troops to deal with the bandits, which made them a scourge. He didn't expect his Lang Jun would want to do that. But where would she get the manpower? Yes, but you don't have to worry. Since I dare to use the few people I have to deal with this matter, I naturally have absolute confidence. Zhang Pengji was not stupid. If she was not careful, she would lose her life. She might even lose all the people in her hands. Since she dared to do it, she naturally had 100% confidence. To put it bluntly, she was very calculative and would not do a losing business. Meng Hun didn't understand what kind of trump card his Lang Jun had. How could she be so confident that she dared to confront the bandits? However, he soon found out why. Zhang Pengji took out a piece of bamboo paper that was folded into the size of a palm and handed it to him. Unfold it and you'll know why I dare to do it. Meng Hun did as he was told. He turned the bamboo paper over and over and finally found the right angle. Then, as the former commandant of the Meng family, he was so shocked that he almost threw away the bamboo paper in his hand. However, he was still rational and restrained himself. He carefully folded the bamboo paper according to its original shape. That cautious and considerate look was as if he was handling a precious treasure. Although it was just a drawing, it was priceless to Meng Hun. This drawing. Meng Hun was a warrior without much education, but he was literate and had read some books. He had been the commandant of the county for so many years, so his eyes and knowledge were far better than those of ordinary warriors. At first, he didn't understand what the picture was. However, when he carefully read the small annotations, a huge idea suddenly arose in his mind. His heart trembled. At the same time, he felt deeply that Zhang Pengji trusted him. He felt more and more at ease. He was no longer the commandant of Meng County. Life was full of ups and downs, and he was at the lowest point of his life. He even wanted to die. But as a man who didn't want to make a name for himself and leave his name in history, Zhang Pengji's words hit the soft spot in Meng Hun's heart. He didn't have the loftiness of the others. He didn't feel that it was a waste of talent or a waste of talent for him to go from a commandant to a young child subordinate. Zhang Pengji bet that he could be trusted. Wasn't he also betting that she could be loyal to him? He was broad-minded and full of lofty sentiments. Based on this alone, even if he had no power or influence, he was still 1,000,000 times better than some nobles. Who could be sure that this unknown kid wouldn't become famous in the 9 states in the future? Meng Hun's mind was completely focused on the drawing Zhang Pengji had given him. It was the crossbow drawing he had shown Xueqi before. Even Xueqi, who didn't know much about it, could see its value. How could Meng Hun, a professional martial artist, not see it? This thing has already been made? He tried hard to suppress his excited voice, so as not to embarrass himself. Zhang Pengji shook her head regretfully and said, "Currently, the craftsmen are still rushing to make the crossbow. Although the crossbow is feasible, the wood required is relatively delicate. If it's not tough enough, it won't be able to unleash its original power, and the shooting range won't be as far as expected." Meng Hun felt a little regretful, but he wasn't too disappointed. This crossbow is half the size of a normal bow, and it's light and portable. It's very suitable for rapid combat. After Meng Hun understood the contents of the drawing, he was excited. He also understood why Zhang Pengji was so confident in suppressing the bandits. Training a soldier into a sharpshooter with 100% accuracy not only required a lot of time and energy, but it also had high requirements for the trainee. Eyesight, arm strength, and the ability to judge the surrounding environment were all indispensable. If the painstakingly trained soldier was injured on the battlefield, resulting in a problem with his arm or vision, the soldier would basically be useless. Naturally, it meant that the cost of training the soldier would be wasted. However, if the crossbows described in the blueprints were made, even the most ordinary soldiers would only need a little bit of training. It wouldn't take much effort, manpower, or cost to train them into existences comparable to godly archers. Even if they were slightly inferior, they wouldn't be too bad. Moreover, how many sharpshooters were there today who could shoot with such accuracy? As long as they had the crossbows, they could quickly train as many soldiers who were good at shooting as the craftsmen could make them. Because it was light and easy to carry, they could carry it on their back. They could carry a few days' worth of food and enough arrows to travel through the dense forest. Those bandits would have been shot full of holes by the crossbow before they could even get close to them. It was no wonder that his Lang Jun was so confident. If it were someone else, they would have to pay a huge price to eliminate the bandits. However, there was one thing that Meng Hun didn't quite understand. Even the government didn't care about the bandits. It could even be said that they didn't have the energy to deal with them. Why did his Lang Jun want to do that? Faced with this question, Jiang Pengji thought about it and said to him, "If I'm lying, I'll tell you that I'm a living bodhisattva. It's my duty to punish the evil. But if I'm telling the truth, it's definitely not like that." Meng Hun was speechless. "The truth is, you need money to recruit soldiers and buy horses. I'm so poor that I don't even have money in my pocket. How can I afford to buy young strong men?" Jiang Pengji snorted. Meng Hun looked calm on the surface, but there was an indescribable subtle feeling in his heart. She continued, "Most of the bandits are young people who can't make a living anymore. Although there are some problems with them, we can't say that all of them are undesirable. If we choose carefully, we can still pick out some good seedlings." Meng Hun was speechless. He believed that reason. Jiang Pengji's joking expression suddenly turned serious. "As for the other reason, it's what I've told you before. If we let the bandits gather and their power grow, I'm afraid that they will be restless when the news of the chaos in Meng County in Song Prefecture reaches here. Instead of waiting to face the bandits that are like locusts, it's better to seize the opportunity to divide them and break the relationship between the bandits." Meng Hun looked serious and said, "Lang Jun, you're far-sighted." Jiang Pengji added, "But it's true that I don't have money." Meng Hun was speechless. Why did he feel like he had boarded a pirate ship? He secretly scratched his head. Some doubts flashed across the serious face of the county military chief, but he quickly suppressed them. He had just joined his new master and needed to do something to prove himself. How could he have such a big misunderstanding about his Lang Jun? Chapter 180. Jiang Pengji was more concerned about the fact that they were the first members of the Lu family. She even personally came out to protect Meng Hun and his men. For the sake of caution, these people were all servants that the Lu family had just bought. Their birthplaces and origins could all be checked. However, Jiang Pengji seemed to be thinking too much. It was impossible for the guards at the gate to inspect the carriages of the Lu family. Only a greenhorn who had just taken up his post and did not know anything would carefully inspect the carriages of the nobles. If they met someone with a good temper, they might praise them for abiding by their duties and strictly enforcing the law. But if they met someone with a bad temper and disdain for the common people, anyone who dared to inspect the carriages and delay the nobles' time would definitely be taught a lesson. So when the guards saw the emblem of the Lu family on the carriages, they all put on flattering smiles and let them pass without further inspection. These guards were experienced guards of the city gates. They could recognize even the most inconspicuous emblem of a poor family in Hejian County. Not to mention, the Lu family's current status was not bad. With Lu Shi, the county chief in the court, no one dared to take the initiative to provoke them. Jiang Pengji was happy to see them make things easier for them. Of course, she wouldn't say anything. Jiang Pengji didn't try to curry favor with them. She just said in a casual tone, "I've already sent people to prepare enough clothes and food. It should be enough for you to recuperate for a while. I don't think you can complain about the quality of life after chasing after Meng Liang these past few days." Meng Hun didn't think that his previous life was unbearable. He deserved the care of his new master. But when he thought of his brothers who helped him escape from the Meng family's army, he couldn't help but feel a little depressed. They didn't die on the spot. They didn't get the proper care after they were injured. Their condition worsened and they died of illness. He brought his brothers out of Meng County, but he couldn't even let them return to their homeland. He could only bury them in the wilderness. "I have a presumptuous request. I don't know if you can agree to it." Meng Hun cupped his hands in front of his chest. He was very serious. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and said, "If you have something to say, just say it. You don't have to worry about this or that. I'm not the kind of person who has too many taboos. I won't blame you for this. Just tell me." Meng Hun felt warm in his heart and said with some embarrassment, "In addition to the brothers I brought out, there are 3 others hiding in the mountains." "Are the injuries serious?" Meng Hun said. "Before, with the thing you gave me, my illness was slightly suppressed. But my body is still very weak, so I can't move. Since that's the case, wait until you've settled down at the farm, then go to the mountain to receive them. There are many ferocious beasts in the forest. It's too dangerous for the three of you to stay there. You're being careless. Jiang Pengji's words warmed Meng Hun's heart. Meng Hun's face was full of shame. He didn't agree either and insisted on leaving one person to take care of the wounded. However, his brothers were stubborn and refused no matter what he said. How could Meng Hun dare to disappoint such sincere feelings? Only by killing their enemies with their own hands and taking revenge would they be able to get back at them. Thank you for your understanding, Lang Jun. Jiang Pengji didn't say anything. After all, to her, it was as easy as lifting a finger, but to Meng Hun, it was life-saving. The training of the farm is currently in Xiaoyu's hands, but after you go there, I'll hand it over to you. When Meng Hun heard that, he was at a loss. He was a little flattered, but also a little uneasy. Although he didn't know who Xiaoyu was, he knew the principle of first come, first served. If he went there and asked Xiaoyu to let go of his work, that didn't seem right. Although Meng Hun was a martial artist, he also knew the ways of the world. Jiang Pengji saw his uneasiness and said, "Don't think too much. We are short of people, so we use Xiaoyu as two people." Meng Hun was speechless. Suddenly, he felt pity for Xiaoyu. What should he do? Did he know that he was being exploited by Lang Jun? Suddenly, a blurry figure appeared in Meng Hun's mind. It was the figure of him working diligently under Lang Jun's whip. If he knew you were going to take over, he would be happy. After all, it's not something he's good at. If he wants to do well, he needs to spend more energy and time. Jiang Pengji leaned against the table. Meng Hun was in the same car as her, and the others were in another rented car. And, to be honest, you have actually met him before. Don't be too nervous. Xiaoyu is easy to get along with. Met him before? Meng Hun asked. He tried hard to recall the relevant memory, but he couldn't find it. Jiang Pengji smiled and said, "That day, he was the one with a white cloth wrapped around his face, sitting by the river and fishing." Meng Hun vaguely had an impression of him. He seemed to be a young boy. Anyway, they had met before. Meng Hun's nervousness gradually faded. He thought to himself, why should I worry about a young boy? However, Meng Hun would soon regret his thoughts. He was indeed a young boy, but he was in charge of finances and internal affairs. Xueqi could decide everyone's quality of life, but Meng Hun was clumsy with words. How could he be Xueqi's opponent? Soon, the farm was close at hand. Meng Hun sighed in his heart. He didn't expect to come here for the second time with such an identity. When they arrived, Xueqi was still diligently supervising the training of the servants, or rather the troops. They didn't know if it was because Jiang Pengji had trained him before, but his appearance and mental state were much better than before. Hearing that his Lang Jun was here, Xueqi quickly stopped what he was doing and slightly tidied up his appearance. However, when he saw the strong man standing behind Jiang Pengji, Xueqi's polite smile froze on his face. This guy. Why is he here again? Xiaoyu, come and meet me. Jiang Pengji smiled at Xueqi and said, "This is the new chief coach. His surname is Meng." Xueqi was speechless. How did they hook up in such a short time? Why didn't he know anything about it? He felt like he was still dreaming. The bullet screen was full of doubts, but Xueqi politely greeted Meng Hun. Seeing Xueqi greet him, Meng Hun subconsciously saluted him. Jiang Pengji was very satisfied with one of them. One was civil, one was military, one was internal, and the other was external. Since Coach Meng is here, I'll leave the training to him. As for the details, I'll talk to Coach Meng later. Before Jiang Pengji said anything, Xueqi already wanted to shake his hand. Meng Hun didn't expect her to shake his hand so quickly. He looked a little embarrassed. Jiang Pengji said to Xueqi impatiently, "Coach Meng just arrived, and you can't wait to shake my hand. It's as if I mistreated you before." Chapter 181. Xueqi was very clear about his own ability. A person's energy was limited, and he couldn't do everything. Even if he could, it would take an unimaginable amount of time and energy. Compared to the final result, the investment was too high, and the loss outweighed the gain. Now that Meng Hun was here, it meant that he could get rid of the complicated things and have more time to study. Although the Lus were not the top aristocratic family, they had a rich collection of books. Xueqi couldn't imagine how many books there were. In the past, he loved a book like it was a treasure, and he would read it over and over again. Now, he had a whole treasure house, But he had to spend so much energy on something he was not good at. How could he not feel sad? Now that Meng Hun had taken over some of the things, Xueqi couldn't be happier. Naturally, he didn't care about his Longjuan's teasing. But Xueqi still had some doubts. When did his Lang Jun take over Meng Hun? Although he knew that Meng Hun was good at deceiving people, Meng Hun had seen the world. Why was he so easy to trick? While Meng Hun went to help his men settle down, Jiang Pengji tilted her head and glanced at Xueqi. Why are you looking at me like I'm a human trafficker? Xueqi sighed. Longjuan's ability to persuade people is incomparable to those human traffickers. How long has it been, and Captain Meng Hun has been subdued by you so easily? Really, speed is of the essence in war. It was so fast that I didn't even have time to react. As an accountant, he also needed time to make arrangements. As the general coach, Meng Hun's living quarters had to be spacious. Even though it couldn't be very nice, it still had to be clean and tidy. The previous batch of servants had been divided into several groups, and they were familiar with each other. Now that Meng Hun's subordinates had suddenly appeared, what if they didn't handle it well and the troops became hostile? Not to mention, Xueqi had to send someone to prepare bedding and clothes for them. Dinner should also be prepared for the people who had appeared out of nowhere. She came so suddenly and without any prior notice. He suddenly had the illusion that he was the housekeeper of the house. Speaking of which accountant would take care of so many messy trifles? Jiang Pengji's mouth twitched. Xueqi sounded as if she had done something to Meng Hun. This is probably fate. Just like how I met Xiaoyu, I should also meet Meng Hun. This time, it was Xueqi's turn to be silent. Even though a long time had passed, he still hadn't forgotten the details of that day. Xueqi looked at Jiang Pengji speechlessly and whispered to her, "Since Coach Meng has surrendered, does that mean Meng Liang?" "Yes, I've received the letter." Jiang Pengji suddenly raised her lips. "That Meng Liang. Haha, luckily he had sharp eyes when he was reincarnated. Otherwise, with that brain of his, I don't know if he could live to grow up." His IQ was touching. Meng Liang's parents must have worked hard to give birth to a son with such a low IQ, and raise him into such a useless person. Xueqi asked, "How much food did you ask for?" "About 500 stones. Meng Liang filled it in himself, but I think it's too little. How many people can eat it?" Jiang Pengji snorted. She wasn't a beggar. She was looking down on her by asking for a few hundred dawn of food. Xueqi also said, 500 dawn is indeed too little. Since the Mengs don't lack food, we'll just ask for 2,000 dawn. Not to mention, the transportation team from Meng County to Hejian County will consume a huge amount of rice. While they were talking, they had increased the original price of 500 dawn of rice to 2,000 dawn. They were so arrogant that they deserved a beating. But, how do you plan to deliver this letter to the Mengs? Xueqi picked up a brush and wrote a blackmailing letter with his left hand, which he wasn't used to using. The letter stated that Meng Liang was in his hands and that if they wanted to ransom him, they had to follow the letter. They would exchange rice for Meng Hun and would not accept bribes. They had to deliver the rice within X days after receiving the letter. Of course, Meng Hun was the kidnapper. Since he had already broken up with his old boss, it was okay to break up with him even more. Jiang Pengji heard that and chuckled. She said, "What's so difficult about this question? We don't have to send someone to deliver the letter all the way to the Mengs in Meng County. We just need to put the letter in the woodshed in the gambling house." Xueqi almost dropped the brush with his left hand. How could his Lang Jun be so capable? She knew everything. He felt that his brain was a little redundant and he was unhappy. How can you be so sure? Meng Liang came to Hejian County after getting rid of his entourage. In other words, it's very likely that the entourage took a detour when looking for Meng Liang. When they received the news that Meng Liang was locked up in the gambling house, it was highly likely that they would arrive 1 or 2 days later. More importantly, I didn't see any traces of Meng Liang's entourage last night. I'm guessing that they will arrive today or tomorrow at the latest. It didn't matter if Meng Liang was late by 1 day, 2 days, or 3 days. What mattered was that when those retinues arrived in Hejian County, they would definitely go to the woodshed in the gambling house to search for Meng Liang. In this way, they would naturally see 2 obvious bamboo slips. If the entourage knew that Meng Liang was dead, they would be afraid of the Mengs pursuing the matter. Naturally, they wouldn't dare to send the letter back. Maybe they would scatter and run for their lives. But what if they weren't sure whether Meng Liang was dead or not? Then the result would be completely different. Jiang Pengji continued leisurely. When they see the blackmail letter, they will think that the kidnappers have something to gain from it. Before their greed is satisfied, Meng Liang is still alive. In that case, they will definitely try their best to send the 2 letters back to Meng County in Song Prefecture as soon as possible so that Meng Liang won't be delayed and suffer. After they rescue Meng Liang, they might be able to make a great contribution. Meng Liang's death and his life were completely different. If he was dead, the Mengs wouldn't care if Meng Liang got rid of the entourage on his own. They would definitely make the entourage pay. If he was alive, even if the Mengs would punish the entourage for failing to watch over Meng Liang, they would still compensate the entourage double for Meng Liang's actions. To put it bluntly, Jiang Pengji was scheming that the entourage would risk their lives to send the 2 letters safely to the Mengs. Xueqi was speechless. Jiang Pengji couldn't help but laugh when she saw his hopeless expression. I know why you're asking for so many details. You're expecting me to ask you questions and then you'll tell me the same thing, aren't you? Chapter 182. Jiang Pengji raised her eyebrows and smiled. Then, I'll try to be more careful next time. Xueqi wanted to laugh. He had never felt so tired before. Lang Jun was sometimes too smart. She was not happy being a subordinate because there was no sense of accomplishment. She was redundant. By the way, I asked the housekeeper to look into it. I heard that Xiao Yu has a widowed aunt. Is that true? Xueqi was startled by her sudden question. He answered, There is indeed an aunt. Why do you ask? I'm just asking. I can't not know who my subordinates have. Xueqi was suspicious. According to his understanding of his Lang Jun, she never liked to waste time and energy. But he had something to say when it came to his aunt. I see. Thank you for your concern. She has been a widow for many years. Her son died young. She lives alone and is quite poor. She occasionally sews or washes clothes for people to make a living. She helped me with my mother's funeral. When I was in prison, she was the only one who secretly sent me dry food and cakes. Originally, I wanted to wait for things to settle down before returning to my hometown to bring her here to spend the rest of her life. Since you mentioned it, I have a presumptuous request. It was the second time Jiang Pengji had heard the word presumptuous request that day. She could just say it directly. Your aunt is good to you. You should be filial to her. There is nothing that can't be said. I will send someone to Zisong County to pick her up. The road will be in the wilderness. I don't trust you to travel alone. Don't worry about it. Just focus on your work. Jiang Pengji could not help but reflect. Did she look like such an unreasonable person? If she did not mention it, Xueqi would probably hold it in for another month or 2 before asking. Xueqi did not know what she was thinking, but he was touched by Jiang Pengji's arrangement. After all, he was already a slave. His Lang Jun did not even need to be polite to him. It was reasonable for her to order him around. These days, he did not even feel the slightest sense of inferiority or uneasiness of being a slave. Not only did he not feel that way, but he also forgot about it. It was only when he had to change the dressing for the tattoo on his face that he felt his heart bleed. The pain numbed him, and he had no choice but to face this embarrassing fact. His encounter with his Lang Jun was not a pleasant one, but he had to admit that he was impressed by him after spending so much time with him. A gentleman would die for his bosom friend. Perhaps the young man in front of him, who was not even as tall as him, was the wise master he had been waiting for all his life? The next time you return to the manor, go and get a few months' salary in advance. Since we've brought the old lady here to enjoy her life, we can't let her work hard for a living. You're a young man, so you should treat it as a form of training for yourself. However, the elderly still need to take good care of themselves. From Jiang Pengji's point of view, the frail elderly and children belong to the vulnerable and protected groups. Xueqi did not hesitate this time. Instead, he accepted her kindness generously. A penny stumps a hero. Xueqi, who was good at internal affairs, understood this very well. That was why he didn't decline pretentiously, because there was no need to. He didn't have any savings and he had to rely on the Lu residents. Even if he brought his aunt over, he wouldn't be able to take good care of her. That was one of the reasons why Xueqi was worried. Fortunately, his Lang Jun was considerate and understood his difficulties. If he didn't accept it, He would be crazy. Xueqi felt relieved, as if a heavy stone had been lifted from his heart. But soon, he noticed that Jiang Pengji's eyes revealed a perplexed look, as if she was troubled by a difficult problem. Xueqi thought to himself, what kind of problem can make this young Lang Jun so perplexed? He felt that he couldn't miss this opportunity. If she had any problems, he would definitely solve them. Don't think about that problem. Let him do it. Lang Jun, you look perplexed. What's troubling you? Xueqi asked softly. Jiang Pengji glanced at him and said, I'm thinking about a problem, and I seem to have an answer. What problem? Even the smart and quick-witted Lang Jun can't figure it out? Xueqi felt that it was time for him to show off his skills. Let me give you an example. Jiang Pengji pointed at Xueqi. He looked confused. She said, my original plan was that you worked hard and should be rewarded. But after my father reminded me, I realized that you would enjoy it more if you cared more about your family. The reward is the same, but obviously, you prefer the latter. This time, Xueqi was completely dumbfounded. He wanted to show his talent. After all, even his Lang Jun couldn't solve it. If he could solve it, he would be more valued. But when she asked the question, he was speechless. He didn't know how to answer. He thought that she was making fun of him, but when he looked at her expression carefully, he realized that she really didn't understand. Suddenly, Xueqi didn't know whether he should laugh or cry. If he knew that there was a word called cute in the world, he would know how he felt just now. His Lang Jun had a strange sense of cuteness. According to Ku, this can't be generalized. It varies from person to person. Xueqi wasn't that harsh to Jiang Pengji. After all, she was just a 12-year-old boy. The ways of the world required not only talent but also experience. If she didn't understand, she could teach or learn. It varies from person to person? Yes. For example, Coach Meng. The thing you asked me to prepare is what he needs now. It's what he needs. Even if it's not expensive, it's enough. As for Auntie, I've always wanted to bring Auntie over, but I've been short of money and I don't have any foundation to stand on. I don't even have the slightest idea on how to bring Auntie over safely. But your actions have solved this problem. Xueqi said seriously, to you, it's just a small effort, but to others, it's different. Isn't it a great favor to solve a difficult problem that they have no solution to? Lang Jun said it yourself. It's not about the weight of the gift, it's about the intention. The two are the same. However, a boss bribing and pacifying his subordinates, closing the distance between them, and deepening their relationship. This was originally a beautiful and hazy thing. But his Longjuan style was different. She asked him directly, and he was the person involved. To be honest, it was a little awkward. Xueqi felt like he had nothing left to live for. Jiang Pengji was not stupid. She understood immediately that she had fallen into the wrong path. She focused on the culture of this era and the so-called bloodline, but she ignored the simplest core. I understand. I was in a dead end. Jiang Pengji nodded seriously. Chapter 183. Jiang Pengji felt as if she had cleared the fog and walked out of a dead end. Many things became clear to her. Of course, there was a huge difference between the two eras, but people's hearts were always the same. She had been stuck in a dead end. While she was thinking, Xueqi suddenly smiled and dared to tease her. It's rare that there are things that you don't know. Jiang Pengji didn't feel offended at all. After all, no one was perfect. She had many flaws, so there was nothing to deny. No one is omniscient and omnipotent. I don't understand these things, and I might even be wrong about them. Isn't that normal? Jiang Pengji looked at Xueqi with clear eyes and said, let me give you another example. Don't you always study hard just to learn what you don't know? Xueqi almost choked on his own saliva. How could that be the same? If it weren't for his Longjuan's strong and dazzling performance, as if she was an omniscient and omnipotent person, he wouldn't have teased her like that. However, Jiang Pengji clearly recognized her shortcomings and didn't mind being teased by others. She was rare, and that was her biggest advantage. Didn't you see how the most famous prime minister, the teacher of the previous dynasty, was killed by the Gaozong? The prime minister of the previous dynasty just fulfilled his duty and was cruelly killed by the Gaozong's only son. The higher one's position was, the more they couldn't tolerate others looking at their shortcomings. Some people thought it was honest advice, while others thought it was unpleasant to the ear. But no matter which one it was, it varied from person to person. If the lord they served was broad-minded and could accept good advice, of course, they would listen to their subordinates' advice and correct their mistakes. However, if the lord they served was narrow-minded and couldn't bear to hear even half a bad word, even if they didn't flare up on the spot, they would still be harshly remembered by others behind their backs, causing people to feel uneasy. How many loyal subjects and generals would follow such a lord to the death? Therefore, Xueqi was moved by Jiang Pengji's ability to admit that she had her shortcomings so easily. Xueqi was secretly touched, but Jiang Pengji couldn't touch his cute point at all. At that moment, Meng Hun had already settled the rest of his brothers. His face was full of joy. He went to take a look. It was a dry and tidy shared bed. Every bedding was good and warm. He didn't feel the slightest bit cold. Meng Hun was very satisfied with this treatment. There weren't many tenant farmers in the farm, so most of the rooms were empty. Occasionally, they would store some things, tidy up a little, and smoke out the humidity in the room. Basically, it was ready for people to live in. Xueqi had considered the situation of adding more people to the troop, so he had prepared an extra room, which was just in time to be put to use. As for Meng Hun, his residence had already been arranged by the farm's maidservant, so he should have a place to stay at night. Thank you, Lang Jun. Meng Hun bowed to Jiang Pengji as soon as he arrived, but she stopped him before he could kneel down. That's how it should be. Since you've chosen me, I'll at least guarantee you the most basic necessities. Jiang Pengji said calmly and gestured for Meng Hun to sit down. You can ask Xiaoyu about the handover of the troops. I will come to the farm occasionally. If there's any shortage, just let me know. In a few days, the situation will be more tense. Remember to be careful. Meng Hun understood what Jiang Pengji meant. If the Mengs knew that Meng Liang had been kidnapped, they would be furious. By the way, after I go back, I will send my personal maid to you, Jiang Pengji suddenly said. Xueqi, who was enjoying his tea, almost choked when he heard what Jiang Pengji said. Meng Hun didn't know what to do. His face turned red and white and he stuttered, Lang Jun, I appreciate your kindness. But my late wife's mourning period is not over yet, so I really can't accept you. Plus, I don't want to remarry. Jiang Pengji was confused. She looked at Meng Hun and then at Xueqi. Then she raised her eyebrows and complained, Why are you so dirty? What kind of dirty things are you thinking about? The two of them didn't understand what dirty was. Xueqi, who was conveniently insulted by Jiang Pengji, also felt wronged. What was wrong with him? Before they could say anything, Jiang Pengji explained, My maid is here to practice martial arts. What else are you thinking? Meng Hun and Xueqi were stunned, and then they quietly lowered their heads. Xueqi was fine. He knew that his Lang Jun was not a decent person. But Meng Hun reflected on himself. He had forgotten that his Lang Jun was only 12. According to the rules of the aristocratic families, he didn't even have a room. Meng Hun was a special case of sleeping with women at the age of 11. He couldn't be compared to the other noble sons of the aristocratic families. He thought that his little Lang Jun probably didn't know how misleading his words were. There was a subtle awkwardness between the two of them. Meng Hun coughed awkwardly. He couldn't say that he misunderstood that his Lang Jun wanted to give him his maid. But that didn't make sense. Why would he send his maid to the farm to practice martial arts with the troops? Jiang Pengji had her own plans. She didn't have much time to teach Nongqin. Or rather, she didn't have the patience to teach. She could let Nongqin learn some basic physical training from the troops. Meng Hun was a reliable person. With him watching over her, Nongqin wouldn't be taken advantage of. Jiang Pengji would give Nongqin special training from time to time. Soon, she would be able to beat those weak warriors in the troops. Whoever wanted to take advantage of her had to be prepared to be kicked in the balls. My maid likes knives, spears, swords, and halberds. It's too boring to be trapped in the inner house all day. I think it's good for her to practice martial arts if she likes it. She won't be bullied by her husband when she gets married, Jiang Pengji said seriously. What do you think? Meng Hun and Xueqi were confused. What could they say? Lang Jun cared about his maidservant and was afraid that she would be bullied when she got married. A normal person would ask someone to instill the correct concept of being a good wife and educating children for the maidservant, and let her study women's morality and needlework instead of asking her to practice martial arts. What was he thinking? If there was a conflict in the family, he could solve it with his fists? Xueqi looked like he had opened a door to a new world. Meng Hun said, Longjuan's idea is great. He was also a man with a daughter who was brutally murdered. If she could grow up safely, it would be time for him to get married in a few years. As a father, of course, he couldn't bear to see his daughter being bullied. So, even though Longjuan's idea was a bit strange, he still supported it. Xueqi looked at Meng Hun in shock. He felt like he had been rejected by the two. But Xueqi twisted his body uneasily and said, This is not a good idea. After all, the troops are all men. What should we do if the reputation of Longjuan's maid is ruined? Zhang Pengji didn't say anything. Meng Hun said with a stern face, In the previous dynasty, there were also female generals. Why can't women practice martial arts? Xueqi was speechless. Chapter 184. Although that was what Meng Hun said, he still felt uneasy. He felt that something bad would happen. According to his understanding, the personal maids of the noble sons of the aristocratic families would either get married when they were of age, or they would directly become servants in the house. It was extremely rare to see someone like Zhang Pengji, who directly threw her out to practice martial arts. Perhaps it was the only one. Lang Jun was still young and didn't know much about romance, so he didn't mind letting the maid learn martial arts. What if she grew up and regretted it? Meng Hun hesitated to express his concern, but he found out that Lang Jun was not ignorant at all. Not only did he understand, but he was also shrewd. His thoughts were different from other men, and he was more broad-minded. Don't worry. I plan to let the maid learn martial arts. You don't have to be so nervous. Zhang Pengji shook her head and began to put on a bluffing air. It was difficult for the people of this era to understand her thoughts and persistence, so she planned to use a way that the people of this era could understand to explain her thoughts. Moreover, her fallacious reasoning could convince people. She said, I often read the books of the predecessors and read the history books. I found a very interesting phenomenon. Xueqi was interested when she mentioned the history books. He asked, Lang Jun, what did you find? Zhang Pengji said, most women were vassals or even goods that could be bought and sold. This phenomenon was especially serious before the chaos of the 16 kingdoms. The emperor of a country had as many as 33,000 concubines and maids. Although it was an exaggeration, it showed how extravagant the emperor was at that time. On the other hand, men could not marry. In some places, brothers, uncles and nephews even shared wives. It became a custom. Xueqi nodded. The books he read were all from the study of the Lus, so he had naturally read the content. Later, the last emperor favored the villains. He was extravagant and drained the national treasury. The 16 vassal kings occupied land and proclaimed themselves emperors. That was the beginning of the chaos of the 16 kingdoms for hundreds of years. At that time women were robbed. During the famine, they even ate them. Xueqi had also read about this history. At that time, he felt that the era of the 16 kingdoms was too bloody and dark. The central plains were empty, and the population was less than a tenth of what it had been before the 16 kingdoms. It was so ignorant and bloody that it made one's blood boil. The poison caused by the 16 kingdoms did not return to the previous population level until decades after the founding of the Xia kingdom. Most of those famous female generals appear at this time. Zhang Pengji said, Is their value only in giving birth to children, contributing to the population, or becoming food for others? Master Meng and Master Su were known as the two heroes of the army in those days. They were later part of the 5 generals. However, Master Meng loved wine. He drank during a march and almost got into trouble. In the end, it was Master Su who led the army to rescue them and prevented any losses. Therefore, the person who was most displeased with the Mengs was Master Su, who was given the posthumous title of Marquis Su. The posthumous title should have been given to him when he was alive, but Emperor Xia delayed it until he passed away because of the atmosphere in the court and Meng Jing's reputation. But in Zhongzhou, there are many scholars who approve of this news. Zhang Pengji smiled with a touch of cynicism. What does this mean? She is a founding member of the country. Because of her identity as a woman, she fought in battles all her life and made countless contributions. She couldn't be conferred the title of Marquis when she was alive, and the posthumous title was taken away by her descendants after her death. With the current atmosphere, are we moving forward and becoming more open-minded, Or are we moving closer to the end of the dynasty before the 16 kingdoms? Xueqi calmed himself down. Thinking about it carefully, it seemed to be the case all these years. Even Dongqing, which was quite open-minded, had gradually become reserved. Was this a kind of progress or a kind of regression? Xueqi asked. So what do you mean? Nongqing's arrangement is my intention, Jiang Pengji said. After the establishment of the Xia dynasty, the people's livelihood and population have indeed recovered a lot. However, after the 5 kingdoms divided into Xia, there were constant conflicts between the kingdoms. The population that had just started to improve showed signs of withering again. It was already like this, yet the Queen of Zhongzhou still came up with the so-called women's precepts, which required women to be faithful to one man and not marry a second husband. It would be a miracle if the population increased, but the people of Zhongzhou were also brainless. They actually thought that it was very reasonable. Later on, they asked the women in their families to study the women's precepts written by the queen. Had their brains been digested into sh*t? Wasn't the correct way to cultivate the people's health, encourage farming, urge men and women to marry, and issue appropriate laws to support it? If this kind of brain could become the emperor, the *king system still wanted her to fight in the palace to win the favor of this kind of person. She must be brainless. The innocent system. Chapter 185. Suicide. Dongqing also had a post-war recovery law, but some aristocratic families exploited and obstructed it, so it could not be implemented. Now there were still conflicts between the countries. The southern man and the northern borderline were eyeing each other covetously. The war was almost on the verge of breaking out. All the knowledgeable people in the world had a consensus that the world was going to be in chaos again after a few years of stability. Thinking about the history of the 16 countries, and looking at the 5 countries that were not giving in to each other, Xueqi felt more and more helpless. People were like duckweed, drifting without anyone to rely on. The clear voice of the young man continued to ring in his ears, as if it had a strange charm that calmed people's hearts and souls. Young strong men died on the battlefield. If the remaining women don't have the ability to protect themselves, they will be taken back by the northern borderline and the southern man and suffer all kinds of humiliation. If they don't have children continuously, they will be treated as 2-legged sheep by the livestock and be killed when they are hungry. Lang Jun, you mean? Although Xueqi was a man, he had longed for those extraordinary women in the previous dynasty for a long time and admired them wholeheartedly. Because of his admiration, it even affected his choice of future wife. His mother also had a great influence on him. She was a strong woman. Even if she lost her husband at a young age, she could still grit her teeth and raise Xueqi. She taught him how to be a man and provided for him to study. She was like the most common weed that would not be easily subdued despite the wind and rain and trampled on by pedestrians. He didn't dare to imagine that if he married a weak and graceful woman, who was docile and beautiful, who also cried in the wind and screamed when she saw snakes, insects, rats and ants. Then, when something happened to him, who would his wife and children rely on? Who else could they rely on? It was precisely because of this that Xueqi agreed with what Jiang Pengji said, even if it was a little off the mark. Xueqi vaguely understood and felt that this person really had the look of a wise ruler. However, he soon found out that it was all a lie. Women can also make such achievements. Why do they have to be tied up like canaries? Their wings can't fly and they can only be used as decorations? Other than being admired, being a part of your wealth, giving birth to children, supporting your husband and children, there's no other value? Meng Hun did not interrupt, but he also shook his head in denial. Everyone had a daughter. If they gave birth to a daughter and raised her painstakingly, only to have her become a servant to another man, who could bear it? Meng Hun said, as a father, I naturally don't like my own flesh and blood being treated so lowly. Xueqi was still a fledgling, but when he imagined his future, he found it hard to accept. A husband and a father were 2 completely different identities. Naturally, their perspectives were different. I don't think that's the point. The point is, it's such a waste of manpower and resources. Not only did they cripple him, but they also wasted his excellent combat strength. Women had the same battle prowess as men, so why did men have to go to war while women stayed at home? Why don't we go together? Xueqi and Meng Hun were speechless. They were dumbfounded. This was different from the usual way of stirring up love. So, from the beginning to the end, she had said so much, laid so much groundwork, just to say that women should stay at home and not go to the battlefield to waste their strength? This was the real deal, using women as men, right? Meng Hun coughed and tried to say something to ease the awkward atmosphere. Lang Jun is still young. There are many things you don't understand. He smiled. Xueqi immediately understood and turned her head away, unable to bear to look at him. Tell me, what do I not understand? Jiang Pengji felt that if they did not follow her script, she would be very embarrassed. Women, the reason why there are more women in the inner courtyard is that they, are born different from men. Meng Hun said vaguely. How could he explain to his little Lang Jun that women's physiology was different from men's? After their bodies matured, they would need Xueqi water every month, and their bodies would become delicate. Pregnancy would take more than 9 months, and they would not be able to work normally. Even giving birth would be like walking through the gates of hell. Lang Jun was still young and inexperienced. Even if he explained it to him, he might not understand. That was a bit embarrassing. Meng Hun glanced at Xueqi. You are a scholar after all, so you should say something. Unfortunately, Xueqi was already looking at the sky and the earth, and he refused to look at his pleading eyes. Jiang Pengji was speechless. The two men thought that Jiang Pengji did not understand, but in fact, she already knew what they were trying to express through their mysterious eye contact. Because of the physiological structure, men were destined to be external, while women were internal. With the development of society, the social status of the latter would get lower and lower? If these words were said to people in ancient times, it would indeed be the case. But it did not make sense in front of Jiang Pengji. There is nothing in this world that is impossible. Jiang Pengji curled her lips mysteriously and said that out of the blue. Xueqi and Meng Hun stopped eye contact and looked at her. They did not know what she meant. Jiang Pengji obviously did not want to explain. We are going off topic. Anyway, Nong Qin will be training with the troops in the farm. As for training tasks, you don't have to deliberately give her preferential treatment, and you don't have to relax the standards. Just do what you need to do. When the training is almost done, I will make other arrangements. Jiang Pengji didn't believe that they would lose to a group of weak fighters. She taught them with special attention. Meng Hun nodded, but he still wanted to protect her a little bit. After all, girls were different from rough men. That is not a problem. It is also a good thing that Lang Jun's maidservant wants to learn martial arts. At least she can protect Lang Jun. But they are rough people, and sometimes their mouths are not clean. If they are wronged, Meng Hun did not dare to say that he could completely avoid it. Jiang Pengji said indifferently, It's okay. If someone says something dirty, Nong Qin will just break a few of their teeth. If they could fight, they would use their fists to reason. Meng Hun was speechless. If his subordinates had such violent thoughts, Meng Hun would definitely say something. But the one who said it was Lang Jun, so he, up to you, up to you, up to you. After Meng Hun left to prepare, Xueqi suddenly thought of something and asked her a question. Lang Jun, you want women to go to the battlefield just because you think it is a waste of combat power? He deliberately emphasized the word, just. Jiang Pengji suddenly smiled slyly and said, Xiao Yu knows me well. Xueqi was speechless. He suddenly did not want to listen to what Jiang Pengji had to say next. He was afraid that it would shock him. But it was too late. The world values boys more than girls. Many families abandon their daughters and let them be taken away by wolves and tigers. Even if the children grow up, most of them are treated harshly. If the men in the family need money to get married or build a house, most of them will sell the girls cheaply. Xueqi felt that he did not need to listen anymore. Jiang Pengji wanted him to hear it. With the same amount of silver, one strong man can buy 2 girls and even have extra. Most importantly, it was cheap. She could build 2 troops with the same amount of silver. Xueqi was speechless. Just as he expected. Chapter 186. These are all written by Lang Jun. I didn't expect Lang Jun to be so knowledgeable about troop training. Meng Hun held the training rules written by Jiang Pengji like a treasure. Xueqi was not used to Meng Hun's expression of admiration, so he gave him the original draft that Jiang Pengji had written before. The training content could be called Torture by Xueqi. Naturally, it was inhumane. Meng Hun glanced at it and put it down quietly. He would rather read the revised version. Coach Meng, if there's anything you don't understand, you can come to me at any time. Meng Hun was a tactful person. Xueqi handed over the work easily, so the mental preparation he had done before was not put to use. Of course. I'll have to trouble Xiaoyu when the time comes. Meng Hun cupped his hands and smiled. He liked Xueqi a little more. Civil and military were two different fields. As a scholar, Xueqi was not familiar with training, but he was very meticulous in his work. Even though Meng Hun had never been in contact with this fledgling troop before, he had a rough idea after reading the content that Xueqi gave him. They were in the same camp, but they were not familiar with each other, so they did not talk about anything other than work. Xueqi was young, but he was talented and had a high level of comprehension. He learned a lot from Meng Hun's conversation. He was good at internal affairs, so he specialized in that area. He was very interested in the wartime food transportation that Meng Hun mentioned. As the saying goes, before the troops move, the food and fodder move first. A good logistics transportation line could decide the outcome of a war. His Longjuan's ambition was not limited to that. As the first member of Jiang Pengji's team, Xueqi could not lock his position as an accountant in the Luz. In other words, Xueqi had his own ambitions. They weren't small. At least, he wasn't just an accountant. Meng Hun did not hide anything since Xueqi was asking about it. He told him everything he knew and even the names of several books. As for how to find those books, it was not Meng Hun's concern. Of course, Meng Hun did not read as many books as Xueqi. He had the advantage of age and his own experience, which was valuable. Unknowingly, the two of them chatted until night fell. After a hasty dinner, they went back to work. Jiang Pengji went back to the Luz and took out her night clothes. Then she put the two books in a secret place in the woodshed. That's good, she smiled. Everything was under control, which made her mood improve a lot. Her figure quickly disappeared into the night. That night, the gambling house was still very noisy. The gamblers did not care about the loss. They only cared about their own money and the money in other people's pockets. The boss of the gambling house was so angry that he almost vomited blood after Jiang Pengji cheated him of more than 4,000 taels of silver. Later on, he received news that the beautiful woman in the woodshed had been kidnapped by an unknown person. The hired thugs who were on duty at the gambling house had been seriously injured. When the old man heard this, he almost couldn't breathe. However, he had a tough life and was still alive. Even though he had suffered 2 critical hits, the boss would not close down because of this. This business, of course, had to continue. This casino was his property in Hejian County. If it was closed, how much silver would he lose in a day? The boss's face was ashen as he swallowed the blood and broken teeth. He hired a doctor to treat the injured thugs and bought some medicine. After giving them a small sum of money, he sent them home to recuperate. The security of the casino was temporarily handed over to the thugs who were not on duty that day. Big, 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 big. Small, 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 small. This time it must be small. Voices rose and fell one after another, filling the lobby on the first floor of the gambling house. The banker was smiling on the surface, but he was nervous on the inside. He opened the dice cup. 3 sixes. It was still a leopard. The dealer was a killer. At that moment, many gamblers who had lost their minds started to complain that there was a shady deal going on in the gambling house. Why is it a leopard again? This is the 3rd leopard tonight, right? I have lost 20 taels since I came in. The last one was 3. 1, and now it's 3. 6. Who would believe that there is no shady deal? That's right. The money I earned from selling 2 acres of land has been taken away. Faced with the ruckus of the gamblers, the banker sneered coldly in his heart. A bunch of fools. The gambling house was a place where gamblers were emptying their pockets. How could there be no shady deal going on? How could the dealer have won so many times without any shady deal? Weren't they stupid? The dealer saw that the gamblers were getting out of control. Some thugs came forward with sticks and threatened them. The hot-headed gamblers became as obedient as a quail. How could an ordinary person beat a thug with a thick stick with his bare hands? The dealer said calmly, "If you are unlucky, go pray to the god of fortune. If you lose, it's your bad luck. Don't blame the gambling house. What kind of place do you think the gambling house is? If you win, you lose. If you don't win, you have to be arrogant, right?" In fact, the dealer was also in a dilemma. He had lost too much money, and no one was making money. Even the stupidest gamblers would be vigilant, But what could he do? The gambling house had been cheated of so much money. The boss naturally continued to exploit the gamblers. In the past, he only occasionally pulled wool. Now he planned to shave all the wool off the fat sheep. If you want to gamble, go. If not, get lost. The dealer waved his hand in annoyance. The gamblers looked at each other. In the end, no one left. They continued to hold on to the idea that they could make a comeback in the next round and earn back the money they had lost. They continued to indulge in this cruel trap. The dealer saw that they had surrounded the gambling table again. He snorted coldly in his heart. Despicable! The gambling house was still noisy and lively. The roars were mixed with the ecstasy of making money. It continued until dawn. Early in the morning, the leaves of grass were covered with mist. The city gates had not opened. Many people had gathered outside the city. Many of them had brought the vegetables they had harvested from their fields. With a creak, the city gates opened. The people began to line up and enter the city one by one. Thump, thump, thump. The crisp sound of horse hooves came from afar. The people at the end of the line were carefully counting the eggs in their baskets. These were laid by their big hen. They had saved up for a few days to gather these few catties. They were waiting to sell them at a good price at the market to subsidize their family. Get out of the way! The people had already moved aside when they heard the horse hooves. However, they did not expect the other party to be so arrogant. They did not stop at all. Ah! Help! My eggs, my eggs! Who stepped on me? It hurts, ouch! Chapter 187. Those who were lucky enough to escape fell to the ground, while the unlucky ones were trampled by the hooves of the horses. Immediately, a middle-aged woman was trampled on the left side of her chest. After the sound of bones breaking, her chest caved in. Blood flowed from her mouth, and she died. The guards at the gate noticed the commotion and stepped forward to stop it. The 20 or 30 strong men on horseback took out a token from their waists. Who dares to stop the Mengs? Let them in. Hey, they were so stubborn. The guards had seen arrogant people, but they had never seen anyone who dared to kill people on horseback and still dared to announce their family name. Even if they were from the aristocratic families, they still cared about their face. How could they be so arrogant and rude? Stop them. Stop them all. The head of the guards was unhappy. This kind of thing had happened so early in the morning, and several lives had been lost. If he let the murderer go just like that, he would be charged with a crime, and he would not be able to keep his position. I have never heard of anyone with the surname Meng in Hejian County. Arrest them. However, before the guards got close, the one who had trampled people to death on horseback blinded the guard with a whip. I am from the Mengs in Meng County, Zhengzhou. How dare you? The Mengs? The Mengs, one of the 4 noble families in Dongqing and the real emperor of Zhengzhou? The leader of the guard's expression changed several times. Finally, he forced a smile. Oh, I understand. May I know the reason why you have come? Breaking into the gate and trampling people to death? Did they really think that Hejian County was the same as Meng County in Zhengzhou? Cut the crap and let us into the city. Otherwise, we will kill you. The whip in his hand cracked in the air, forcing the leader of the guards to take a step back. Just like that, the group of people casually rode their horses away. Above the gate, the soldiers had already drawn their bows and arrows, waiting for the order to shoot. The leader of the guards was livid. He raised his hand to stop them. If they were really from the Mengs, they would be in trouble if they hurt them. If they were not from the Mengs, they wouldn't dare to be so arrogant in Hejian County. However, they still had to send someone to follow them. Who knew what they were up to? Facing the people lying in pools of blood and hearing the moaning and groaning in his ears, the leader clenched his fists and punched the city wall in anger. Report this matter to the prefectural governor, then send the injured to the medical center. Record everyone's loss and those who died tragically. Send these to the prefectural governor and let him decide. The Meng family of Zhengzhou. They've gone too far. Early in the morning, there were already wails and cries outside the city gate. Back to the other side. After the group entered the city, they immediately galloped on the streets. Fortunately, the market had not opened yet and there were not many pedestrians, so it was easy to avoid them. Do you know where the Fulai Casino is? The leader stopped his horse in front of a passerby who obviously hadn't slept all night. The horse's hooves were raised high and almost fell on the man. The man was so scared that he was no longer sleepy. He felt as if he had taken a stroll through the gates of hell. His back was drenched in cold sweat. No! Under the threat of the horse's hooves, the passerby was so scared that he fell to the ground. The passerby was the gambler who had gambled all night in the Xueqi casino. His eyes were bloodshot, his face was pale, his lips were pale, and his eyes were heavy. From afar, he looked like he was walking on air. You know? Good that you know. Take us there quickly, or you'll be whipped. The leader was overjoyed, and the dozens of strong men behind him also revealed relaxed expressions. They didn't expect to be so lucky that they caught a person just after they entered the city gate, and he happened to know the Xueqi casino. Thinking of Meng Liang, who had been missing for a long time, they couldn't help but feel nervous. They didn't want to escort him to Shangjing to hide. After all, Meng Liang's bad temper was well known. He was also a little lecher. Anyone who was targeted by him, no matter male or female, no matter how good-looking they were, could escape from his claws. The lucky ones survived, and the unlucky ones were beaten to death directly. Thinking that the family head, Meng Zhan, wanted him to be the heir of the family, many elders in the family felt a little disappointed. The Mengs was so glorious. If it was handed over to a playboy like Meng Liang, wouldn't it be over? How could he support a family with his little ability? In contrast, the eldest Lang Jun, who had no sense of existence, was more popular. Unfortunately, he was far away in Shangjing to study, and he wouldn't come back even once a year. He had almost no contact with the Meng subordinates, and he didn't even write a letter to his family. Thinking of this, people could understand. Meng Liang had a son who didn't even have a son. How could he be more likable than Meng Liang, who was sweet and filial? However, it was strange that they were both sons of the same mother. The second Lang Jun, Meng Liang, was useless, while the eldest Lang Jun, Meng Hung, was educated and polite. It was said that he was quite famous in Shangjing. He was going to be evaluated this year, and it was estimated that he would get a good result. Putting away the unnecessary thoughts, the leader threatened the gambler to lead the way. The gambler had no choice but to lead the way in fear. The knife on the man's waist was real, and the whip in his hand was still dripping with blood. He didn't want to die. Is this the place? After several turns, the group stopped in front of a gambling house. Standing outside, they could hear the clamor inside the house. Yes. There is only one gambling house here called Fu Lai. Well, sir, can I go now? If he led the way for others, he could get some tips if he was lucky. But he was leading the way for this man, and it was good enough that he didn't lose his life. The gambler bowed. After getting permission from the leader, he quickly turned around and ran away as if he was being chased by evil spirits. Bah, coward! Behind him, a few of the attendants on horseback laughed, mocking the gambler's horrified expression and actions just now. Shut up! It's more important to find Lang Jun. The leader scolded in a low voice, got off the horse, opened the curtain, and entered the gambling house with his knife. There were about 20 or 30 people in the gambling house, all with knives. They were tall and burly, and had a strong aura. They seemed to be evil. As soon as they entered the hall of the gambling house, the whole space became narrower than before. The sharp-eyed waiter of the gambling house saw them, and his heart skipped a beat. Judging from their clothes and aura, they didn't look like they were here for fun. Could it be that they were in trouble? Thinking of this, the waiter had cold sweat on his back. He forced a smile and went forward to welcome the guests. Don't talk nonsense. Let me ask you, did you catch a young boy 2 days ago? The waiter's expression froze, and his forehead began to sweat. Chapter 188. Humph! Don't play tricks with me. Speak. Did you catch a very good-looking young boy here? The leader was experienced and knowledgeable. How could the waiter's thoughts escape his eyes? He immediately brandished his whip to demonstrate his power. With a loud crack, the sturdy gambling table broke into pieces. The gambler who could not dodge in time was whipped. In the next second, a frightening line of blood seeped through his clothes, scaring everyone away. There was only a broken gambling table left on the ground, and a gambler who was holding his waist, blood oozing out from between his fingers. If you don't tell the truth, I'll let you all have a taste of being whipped later. Let me ask you one more time. Did your gambling house capture a very good-looking young man a few days ago? Speak, did you catch him? The whip in the man's hand was extremely thick, about the thickness of 2 fingers of an adult. There were many fine and dense barbs on the long black whip. The tail of the whip was strung with more than 20 thin blades. With this kind of whip, it did not require much strength to whip someone until they bled profusely. If one used more strength, they might not even be able to withstand a single whip and directly die. The waiter was relatively close to the leader, so he could clearly see the blood dripping from the barbs on the whip. He was immediately scared out of his wits. This little one. The waiter originally wanted to be stubborn, but when his eyes met with the leader's, a kind of illusion of death assaulted him, as if his neck was being strangled by an invisible force, causing him to be unable to say the rest of the words. The other gamblers did not know what had happened, but they knew that the gambling house was probably in big trouble. They wanted to sneak away, but the leader's entourage blocked the door, looking as if they would not let him go until they got an answer. The waiter was unwilling to speak, but the other gamblers felt pity for their lives, so they naturally opened their mouths. 2 days ago, we did catch such a young boy. I heard that the boy is extremely beautiful as a fairy. His skin is exquisite, and his taste is also. The gambler was the first to speak, but before he could finish his words, he was already covered by the person beside him. The entire lobby was silent. Everyone could feel an invisible chilling atmosphere enveloping the entire place. Those gamblers were all ordinary people, and their bodies were even weaker than ordinary people. When had they ever faced such a murderous aura? He was so scared that his legs started to tremble. His knees went soft and he knelt on the ground with a plop. He didn't feel any pain in his knees at all. What they didn't know was that the leader and his followers were also extremely shocked at this moment. They were so shocked that they forgot how to react. They were all adult men who had experienced sex and played with women before. Perhaps some of them had even played with men before. As for what the gambler had described, they knew very well in their hearts what kind of scene would happen. At this moment, there was only one thought in everyone's mind. It's over. It was indeed over. Who was Meng Liang? The Zongzi that Meng Zhan favored, the future leader of the Meng family, was now in a gambling house. It was so embarrassing. The leader's expression was incomparably gloomy, even turning ashen. He didn't dare to think about the storm they would have to face after rescuing Meng Liang. The waiter also wanted to cry but had no tears. He had already realized that the kid he had caught earlier really had a powerful background. Now that they had come to ask for Meng Liang, it was obvious that he was a tough guy. How could a small gambling house resist them? The waiter said shakily, He really isn't here. He was released a long time ago. How could the leader believe that? He would rather believe that these people had evil thoughts about Meng Liang and locked him up in a small dark room. He waved his hand, and the 20 to 30 followers he had brought with him guarded all the entrances and exits of the gambling house, not allowing anyone to escape. Search. The order was given, and the demolition? No, the search began. The leader was like a stone pillar, standing where he was. He crossed his arms in front of his chest, and his resolute face was solemn. The waiter wanted to cry but had no tears. The other thugs received the news and wanted to come up with wooden sticks. One of the followers pulled out a knife from his waist. Blood splashed, staining the gambling table and the scattered silver and gambling equipment. Everyone watched as the thug's arm was chopped off, and then the knife pierced through his chest. He fell to the ground with his eyes wide open in horror. Someone was dead. Blood quickly spread and filled the entire hall. The timid gamblers covered their mouths and vomited. The brave ones also turned pale, like a white wall covered with a layer of lime. Although the thugs in the gambling house were used to doing heartless things, they still knew fear. They only dared to seriously injure people, but they didn't dare to kill them. However, none of them expected that there was no lack of people like this in this world. The knives on their waists were all genuine and could take a person's life. The wait was especially long. One by one, the followers came up with a pale face, but none of them could find Meng Liang. Sir. Our restaurant was indeed blind and caught that young man, but that very night, that young man had already been rescued. The waiter was trembling with fear, and his 2 skinny legs couldn't stop trembling. He didn't dare to tell the truth. If he told the truth and said that the young man disappeared on the second night after being caught, it would undoubtedly confirm the truth that the big mouth of the gambler had revealed. Could any aristocratic family endure such humiliation? If that happened, they would really be finished. Therefore, there were some things that they couldn't admit even if they were beaten to death. After a while, the followers came back one after another. The news was very disappointing. The last one was holding 2 scrolls in his hands. The scrolls were stained with dust. These 2 scrolls were found in a woodshed. Found this. Boss, please take a look. He had interrogated 2 of the thugs and confirmed that the woodshed was where the gambling house kept the goods. Because he didn't dare to make a decision, he didn't open the scrolls to see the contents. The leader reached out his hand and roughly tore the neatly tied strips of cloth on the bamboo scrolls. He shook it open with one hand. He read 10 lines at a time. After he finished reading, the leader's face suddenly became darker and darker, as if ink was about to drip out. Everyone was trembling, afraid that it would say that Meng Liang was already dead. Of course, there was no such content, but it wasn't optimistic either. These people. Kill them all. The leader's eyes flashed, and his murderous aura was obvious. After receiving the order, the other followers didn't hesitate. They all pulled out the knives on their waists and walked to the others. What were these people going to do? Whether it was the people in the gambling house or the gamblers, they were all scared out of their wits. Murder. One of the gamblers couldn't help it anymore. He wanted to run out the door, but his head was instantly cut off from his body. Blood splashed on the wall. At that moment, everyone clearly realized one thing. Chapter 189. What's going on? Jiang Pengji had just finished her breakfast. She meditated for a while and then turned on the streaming room. She greeted the audience as usual. On the way to the study room, she saw 2 servants whispering to each other by the rockery. One of them was crying and looked very sad. Her 5 senses were very good, but they were also troublesome. To deal with this flaw, Jiang Pengji would usually suppress her 5 senses to keep them at half the level of ordinary people. She was a bit far away, so she only heard some words like city gate, someone died, and someone was injured. The servants were all panicked when they saw Jiang Pengji. It was still working time, so how could they not be flustered when they were caught slacking? The Lu's had its own rules and regulations. After County Chief Lu came back, he became more strict and did not allow anyone to slack off. Don't be so flustered. Tell me, what happened at the city gate? Jiang Pengji faced the middle-aged woman who had been crying secretly. I'm not an unreasonable person. I won't blame you if you have a reason for chatting. The middle-aged woman grabbed her sleeves nervously and said sadly, This morning, my mother and father entered the city together. We didn't expect a group of strong men who claimed to be from the Mengs of Cangzhou to break in. They rode their horses and injured people. My father tried to protect my mother and one of his legs was trampled by a horse. Jiang Pengji's face turned serious, and the audience in the streaming room expressed their shock. Mingyue Tianya. Oh my God, did I hear it wrong? Armstrong. Why do I feel that all the people and things that the streamer has been in contact with recently are related to the Mengs? Ye Qingzhou. The Mengs are too arrogant. They even dared to break into the city gate. Do they want to die? Since your father was injured, I guess you must be anxious now and have no mood to work. Go to the cashier and get an extra month's salary to buy some nourishing tonics for your father. He is old and will not recover as quickly as young people. The servant heard that and suddenly burst into tears. She thanked Jiang Pengji repeatedly. After she left, Jiang Pengji looked at another servant who came to deliver a message. Her eyes turned cold. Come here and tell me what happened at the city gate this morning. Be as specific as possible. Jiang Pengji had expected Meng Liang's entourage to come, but she didn't expect them to come so quickly and so arrogantly. They even let their horses hurt people, and it seemed like they even killed them. It was a servant woman who came to deliver the news. She was a servant of the Lu residence, but she didn't live in the Lu residence. She usually worked in a secluded area in the outer yard and was very idle. After she was done with her own work, she still had time to gossip about the rumors in the marketplace. She could be considered the gossip center of the entire Lu residence. Although she wasn't present, as a gossip girl, her storytelling skills were quite good. She narrated it vividly. Are you sure someone died? Jiang Pengji asked. Her eyes flashed with a hint of murderous intent. Her impression of the Mengs dropped by half. The servant woman gestured with her hands and said, That's right. There were more than a few who were trampled to death by the horses' hooves. There was also a beautiful girl who was of marriageable age and followed her mother into the city to buy some red hair ropes. Who would have thought that this would happen? Everyone says that the man surnamed Meng is the local tyrant of Zhengzhou. He can't even control the current officials. Now that I see it, it's true. Zhang Pengji glared at her coldly and said, "How dare you say something like that? Don't take your life." The maidservant came back to her senses and immediately broke out in a cold sweat. She quickly bent down and begged for mercy. "It's good that you have a long memory. Trouble comes from the mouth. It doesn't matter if you die or not, but don't drag the entire Lu residence into it." Zhang Pengji waved her hand and gestured for her to leave. "Since there's a reason for this, I won't make trouble for you this time. Don't leave your post without permission in the future." The bullet screen in the live stream room flashed past her eyes one after another. Some of them were like, "Ha ha ha," while others were like, "Oh." Raising a chestnut. The host's behavior is typical. Only the officials are allowed to set fires, but the common people are not allowed to light lamps. I remember that she named the royal family of Dongqing by name. When the servant said so, she scolded her with a straight face, hoping that the maidservant would be traumatized. Raising a chestnut. If not, how can she be a match for the domineering host? Raising two chestnuts. The only host who is domineering and capricious but still not pleasing to the eye. Tang roasted chestnut. No. Now isn't the point that the Mengs are arrogant? They broke the city gate with horses and killed people? Obviously, there were viewers who were willing to understand the plot of the live stream, but only a few. Most of them were there to watch the host. The Mengs. Zhang Pengji could imagine the bloody chaos at the city gate in the early morning just by simulating it in her mind. In the future, the first ones to be destroyed will be the Mengs. She suddenly opened her eyes, turned around, and left the Lu residence. She got on the carriage and asked the groom to drive her to Fulai gambling house. Before he could even get close, the stench of blood had already entered his nose. Everyone's blood was slightly different. People with a keen sense of smell could even distinguish a lot of information by smell, such as how many people had died and how long they had been dead. That was her level in her previous life. In this life, she had only fused a little, so she was not that good. However, based on her rich experience, the number of people who had died was definitely not less than 50. Zhang Pengji's face turned cold. She said to the groom, "Go a little further and see what happened." The coachman drove the carriage forward a little. A group of people surrounded the entrance of the gambling house. One by one, people dressed in bailiffs' uniforms carried out the corpses covered with white cloth. The blood had yet to coagulate, and it dripped onto the ground. Everyone's faces turned pale when they saw it. They were all killed. Zhang Pengji clenched her fists. At that moment, her expression was unprecedentedly cold. The system, which was one with her, wanted to reduce its sense of existence to zero, for fear that Zhang Pengji would think of it. "No, I really can't stand the angry aura of the host." The almost stagnant atmosphere did not last long. Zhang Pengji loosened her fists and opened her eyes, which were clear and bright again. "Go and ask them what exactly happened." The coachman got off the carriage and asked. Zhang Pengji lifted the curtain. The bailiffs inside were still moving the corpses. One of them was carrying a large bag of bloody things. Fresh blood stained the coarse cloth and dripped down continuously. The bag contained the broken limbs of other corpses. Zhang Pengji was shocked. Actually, Zhang Pengji did not need the groom to ask. She could piece together a complete picture based on the discussions of the onlookers. A group of strong men in armor, with big knives at their waists and long whips in their hands, entered the gambling house. Not long after, the people inside were all dead. "Hey! You mean, the killers and the group at the city gate? Are they in cahoots?" Someone said mysteriously. He did not dare to raise his voice, for fear of being targeted by the group of killers. They must be in cahoots. Someone saw them break through the city gate and go straight to this gambling house. A life for a life. These executioners should be executed. Chapter 190. Second Lang Jun, I've asked. The coachman came back and whispered to Zhang Pengji through the curtain to make sure she could hear him. After a while, Zhang Pengji asked, "Is there any sign of the Lu's residents in the carriage today?" The coachman was stunned for a moment, and then he answered, "Lang Jun, how can I disobey your orders? Although he did not know why his Lang Jun suddenly requested not to take any carriages with the Lu's logo, the Lu's were not poor. They had a few carriages for all kinds of banquets and trips. Okay. Jiang Pengji closed her eyes and said to the coachman, "Drive the carriage to Shi City first." Okay. The coachman whipped the horse, and it moved gently, bypassed the crowd, and went to Shi City. After Jiang Pengji left, there were a few strong men sitting on the second floor of the tea house opposite. The tea on the table was cold, and there was no trace of it being touched. They stared at the gambling house opposite them. They had been waiting for a long time, and there was nothing special. They were the Meng's entourage, and they were there to protect Meng Liang on his way to Shangjing. The person who was being protected like the moon was the leader. The man's eyes were fixed on a carriage that was moving away, and his eyes were filled with doubt. He called the waiter over and pointed at the carriage that was not far away. "Do you know which family it belongs to?" The waiter stretched his neck awkwardly. He tried to identify it for a long time, but he could not think of any familiar family. It was a very ordinary carriage. The workmanship and materials were common, and even a rich family could afford it. The waiter was confused. Didn't ordinary carriages look like this? There was no family emblem on it, so who could recognize it? Hujin was not a big place, but it was not small either. Those who could afford to take a carriage were as bright as the stars in the sky. He was just a waiter. It was good enough that he could recognize most of the family emblems of the gentry families. It was too difficult for him to recognize the carriage. He laughed awkwardly and said, "Sir, you are making things difficult for me. It is just an ordinary carriage. 9 out of 10 carriages in Hujin look like this. I really can't recognize which family it belongs to." At that moment, the group of people had taken off their armors. They did not recognize them for the time being. "Leader, what do we do now?" The leader did not speak, but his mind was still wandering. He raised his hand and asked one of his attendants to follow the carriage quietly to see which family it belonged to. He didn't know why, but he felt that something was strange. Most people wouldn't want to go near a place where a murder happened, except for those ignorant people who were not afraid of death. Was it not bad luck to die? Not to mention these families who could afford to ride in carriages. However, the leader had no choice but to give up when the attendant came back and reported to Jiang Pengji about the carriage. "Leader, I don't think that carriage is suspicious, and it's not Meng Hun's group in disguise." The attendant who followed Jiang Pengji around the west and east districts had a helpless look on his face. "Then tell me, why did they stop?" the leader asked. The attendant was stunned for a moment, and then stuttered, "I guess there are too many people watching the show, and they're blocking the way." The leader. Yes, they were used to running amok in Songzhou. They never had the concept of stopping for passers-by. They just ran amok. But this was Hejian County. In other words, he had thought that he was smart, but in fact, he was just being stupid. The leader's face darkened when he thought about it. Or rather, it was as dark as the bottom of a pot. "Leader, we've been here for a day, and we haven't found Meng Hun and his group. We can't catch them. What should we do now?" Meng Liang had been kidnapped by Meng Hun. It was definitely not a good sign. But the leader thought that Meng Liang was not dead, and he had a good reason. The leader said firmly, "Go back quickly and tell the master about Second Longjuan's kidnapping. We can't afford to delay." Some of the attendants were still reluctant to make the decision. "Leader, if something happens to Second Langjun, won't we be?" The attendant made a gesture of cutting his neck with his hand. He looked very nervous. Who was not afraid of death? The leader shook his head and said, "Second Langjun is definitely not dead. Meng Hun doesn't have the guts. Otherwise," the attendant asked seriously, "why? Isn't it simple?" The leader opened the 2 bamboo slips and pointed at the one written by Meng Liang. He said with certainty, "Haha, haven't you noticed that Second Longjuan's writing is neat, clear and steady? It doesn't look like it was written by a panicked person. In other words, Second Langjun must have been sure that he would not die. That's why he wrote this letter. But this Meng Hun is asking for 2,000 dong of food. Isn't he afraid of being stuffed to death?" 2,000 dong of food was not a small amount. But food was not a big deal. As long as Meng Liang was alive and well, everything would be fine. "Leader, you're so wise." A few attendants flattered him one after another, their mouths uttering flattering and auspicious words of flattery. "So, now is not the time to be hesitant. We have to send these 2 bamboo slips back as soon as possible. As long as we can save Second Lang Jun, it will be a great achievement. Even if the master blames us, who doesn't know that Second Lang Jun's disappearance was because of his naughtiness? Even if there was a punishment, it would not be a heavy one. They would even be rewarded with a lot of money after the incident. Unfortunately, the leader thought that Meng Hun and his men would be impatient and come to check on what had happened in the gambling house. That was why he decided to wait on the 2nd floor of the tea house across the street. But after waiting for half a day, all the bodies in the gambling house had been cleaned up, but there was still no sign of Meng Hun. The leader said, "Pack up and get ready to go back to Zhengzhou." "You guys, where do you think Hejian County is? That you can come and go as you please? Hee, let's all go." A strange voice came from behind. The leader and his attendants were immediately alerted. They looked at the person who spoke. "Let's go. You killed someone here and you still want to walk away? There's no such thing as a free lunch in this world." These people were all guards of the Hejian County Governor's office. Each of them had a knife at their waist, so they were quite capable. The 2 sides were in a stalemate, but a strong dragon could not beat a snake in its own land. The leader of the Mengs snorted coldly. He said arrogantly, "How can you catch me now? How are you going to send me back later?" Hearing what he said, the people of Hejian County were instantly filled with righteous indignation. They wanted to pull out their knives and cut them into pieces. Stubborn. The corners of the guard's mouth froze. He looked extremely indignant. Chapter 191. How much power did the Mengs of Zhengzhou have in Dongqing? The Hejian County chief had only heard about it before. Now that he had seen it with his own eyes, he was furious. What did they mean by he was just a small county chief with a title but no power? What could a small official do to him? This is too much. This is too much. The Mengs of Zhengzhou are too much. The Hejian County chief was so angry that he flipped over the table. The fat on his body shook with his movement, and the mustache on his lips almost curled up. It was true that Hejian County was just a small county according to the size of the land and the number of people. But since it was a county, he deserved to be the Hejian County chief. How could he tolerate being humiliated by the servants of the Mengs? The guards of the Hejian County chief's manor who had escorted the people there also looked furious. The leader grinned hideously, raised his hand, and patted the shoulder of the leader of the guards. He whispered to him, "I told you how you brought me here and how you sent me out. Why do you have to humiliate yourself? Let's go." The leader waved his hand, and the 20 or 30 people swaggered out of the Hejian County chief's manor. They were extremely arrogant. In the distance, Jiang Pengji lifted the curtain of the carriage coldly and looked at the arrogant people quietly. They were like roosters who had won a fight. The audience in the streaming room did not witness the whole process, nor did they see how arrogant those people were in the Hejian County chief's manor. However, based on the words of the leader, many people said that they were too arrogant. If they had the ability, why didn't they explode on the spot? I don't agree with the streamer. I'm so angry that my lungs are about to explode. Even Li Gang's son was not so arrogant. The leader was just a servant of the Mengs. How could he be so arrogant? He would not even survive the 2nd episode in a TV series. Inja, to put it bluntly, not only did he survive the 2nd episode, but he also walked out of the Hejian County chief's manor alive. Ili Shabai. Alas, that's how the ancient society was. Power could crush people to death. Time passes between fingers. It's really annoying. Although I know that people's lives were worthless in ancient times, I didn't expect it to be so cheap. There were at least 50 to 60 corpses brought out of the casino. That was 50 to 60 lives. Pianxian Dia Wu. Oh, I don't agree with the saying that time flies. The correct way to put it should be, the lives of civilians are like weeds, or even less than weeds. The lives of people with social status are precious. The atmosphere in the live broadcast room was a little quiet. Previously, when they stopped outside the gambling house, many viewers had already left due to the pressure. It was just that the queue for the live stream was always full. After a wave of people was pushed out, there would still be new people filling in. The number of people online had always been stable at 10,000. Jiang Pengji looked at it coldly for a while and suddenly sent a message in the streaming room. Host V. Are you guys afraid of blood? The viewers in the live stream were dumbfounded. Why did he suddenly ask this question? Could it be that his nerve reflex arc was too long? The next second, Jiang Pengji added another one. Host V. If you're not afraid, I'll teach you the right way to kill. For a moment, the entire live streaming channel was silent, and the bullet screen was empty for a long time. In just a moment, her vision was drowned by the overwhelming number of 666. Yiqing Zhou. Daily brainwashing task. Be impressed by the streamer's handsomeness, completed January 1st. Pianxian Dia Wu. Let's not talk about anything else, just based on the streamer's straightforwardness, I have to give you a string of 666. Ili Sha Bai. Do you still need a leg accessory? You can shout 666 in all kinds of positions. The audience in the streaming room was almost boiling. Jiang Pengji's lips had a trace of a sneer. If you're not happy, you'll fight back. Only a tortoise would swallow his anger. Let's go back first. The carriage's curtain was put down, and the coachman lightly whipped the rope. It didn't take long to get to the loos from there. Jiang Pengji directly asked someone to go to the stable and bring the horse over. I have to go out for some things. If father asks where I went, tell him I'll be back before the city gate is locked. Taking the reins, Jiang Pengji easily leaped onto the horse's back. She took a shortcut and avoided the crowded places. Jiang Pengji arrived at the city gate without a hitch. Seeing the indignant expressions on the guards' faces, Jiang Pengji calmed down. She murmured in a low voice, "It looks like they just passed the city gate. I should still be able to make it." The inspection at the city gate was not slow. She quickly took the reins and mounted the horse, rushing in the direction of the group. The war horse of the northern borderline was pure white. It had a well-proportioned and handsome body, was good at long-distance raids, and had a long endurance. It was a rare and famous horse. It was the first time Jiang Pengji had ridden it, except for the gathering. They should be right in front. But the terrain is flat, and it's easy to be exposed in a short distance. Let's take a detour and get ahead of them. Seeing the messy and deep hoof prints on the ground, Jiang Pengji's eyes flashed. She slightly pulled the reins and let the horse gallop in another direction. The group of more than 20 people naturally wouldn't expect that someone was following them, waiting for the best time to strike. One of the attendants looked a little worried. He asked the leader, if the master blames us for abusing the Meng's name, how can that be considered abusing? If it weren't for those people in Hejian County, we would have been at the next station by now. Second Lang Jun was kidnapped by Meng Hun and his gang. Now is the time to save him. Can they afford to waste such an important time? The leader didn't say anything. It was another attendant who spoke. It was not the first time that he had used the Meng's name for his own benefit. Shut up, all of you. It's more important to get to the next station as soon as possible. The leader pursed his lips. He was anxious. Since the leader had spoken, the others didn't dare to say anything. They all lowered their heads and hurried on. Because of the delay, they couldn't get to the nearest station. The horses were exhausted and needed a rest. The leader looked at the sky and wiped the sweat off his forehead with his sleeve. Let's rest here first. He sat on a small stool and rested. His whole body was covered in sweat. The others also looked tired. They had rushed to Hejian County after receiving the news from Meng Liang, but they were too late. Meng Hun had already kidnapped Meng Hun. In order to send the scroll back to Zhengzhou as soon as possible, they had to continue their journey. In other words, they hadn't slept for a day and a night. They wanted to go to the nearest station to rest and prepare enough food and water to feed the horses, but they still didn't make it in time. Leader, we're out of water and food. If they had known this would happen, they would have restocked in Hejian County first. Now they were in the middle of nowhere. It was too cruel. Just send 3 people out to look for him. Rest for an hour. Don't be late. Hejian County was surrounded by deep mountains. There were many ferocious birds and beasts. With their skills, it was easy for them to hunt small prey. On the other side, Jiang Pengji was hiding nearby. She could hear their conversation clearly. Chapter 192. Those horses are good horses. Why don't we take some? It's also a fortune. Jiang Pengji hid in the dock and carefully observed the group. When her eyes fell on the horses, she couldn't help but feel excited. Although those horses were not as good as the best horses, they had excellent bloodlines and belonged to the Meng's stable. The Meng's was the only one among the 4 noble families that started with military achievements. They also owned the largest stable in Dongqing. Songzhou was located at the intersection of trade routes, so it was very convenient for all kinds of business. The Meng's imported many famous horses from the northern borderline or the southern Man. After several generations of breeding, most of the horses in the stable were of excellent quality. However, they only sold the inferior horses. The best and the best quality horses had to be offered to the main family of the Meng family, or given to the Meng family as compensation to the army of the Meng family. The royal family of Dongqing wanted good horses, so they had to buy them from the northern borderline or the southern Man at a high price. By chance, they learned that the Mengs also had good horses, so the emperor hinted in various ways, hoping that the Mengs would offer a batch of good horses to him. What was the result? The Mengs did not take the emperor seriously at all. They offered a batch of inferior quality horses as a tribute, and bluntly said that the best horses from the stud farm were to be sent to the Mengs army. Not a single one of those good horses was allowed to flow out. This made the emperor of Dongqing very angry. However, the Mengs were indeed not to be trifled with. The emperor of Dongqing was already burning with anger, but he had to maintain an open-minded and hearty appearance. Jiang Pengji didn't want the horses at first, or she didn't even think about it. But their owner was going to die soon. Wouldn't it be a pity if she didn't accept them? As a good girl who didn't like to waste any resources, Jiang Pengji said that the horses were now hers. What if she didn't agree? Hold it in. He sent 3 experienced followers to search for food and water, while the others rested and recovered their strength. I heard that there are many bandits in Hejian. Do you think the 3 of them will run into them? They sat down to rest, and the attendants started chatting. Hey, as long as they are not blind, which bandit will give us trouble? Not to mention 3 people going out together, even if there's only 1 person. Which one of us from the Meng family army doesn't have the imposing manner to fight against 10,000 people? What's so scary about a few mobs? Don't you think so? At the mention of the Meng army's prestige, the attendants suddenly felt a surge of confidence. Indeed, in the whole of Dongqing and even the other 4 countries, who did not know of the reputation of the Meng army? They had guarded Songzhou for many years and helped the royal family of Dongqing protect the vital parts of the country. Wasn't it all thanks to them that Dongqing was able to celebrate peace and prosperity? That's right. But in my opinion, the strongest among us is still the leader. Even that Meng Hun can't compare to you. A follower gently flattered him, and the group of people seemed to have received some sort of hint. Flattery flooded their leader like a tide. The corners of his lips couldn't help but curl up. His heart swayed, and he waited until he was satisfied with the feeling of floating on air before he reprimanded her with a stern face. The leader furrowed his brows and seemed to be very displeased. We're asking you to fix up now, not to gossip like a bunch of gossipy women. If you don't want to rest, then say so earlier. Meng Hun? Haha, a stray dog who betrayed his master isn't qualified to compare to me. The leader is right. We were wrong. How can that hypocritical stray dog, Meng Hun, compare to you? One of the attendants quickly changed his words and flattered the leader with his glib tongue. This attendant clearly had a face full of righteousness, but his eyes darted around from time to time, looking extremely restless. When it came to flattering, he was more active than anyone else. The other attendants immediately followed up and opened their mouths to say, Meng Hun is not qualified to compare to the leader. If you want to compare, throughout the whole of Dongqing, only the Count of Zhenbei's residence is qualified to compare to the leader. I heard that they were beaten up in the northern borderline again. In my opinion, if the leader was the leader with your talent, you would definitely be able to turn the situation around and beat those bastards in the northern borderline back to their grandmother's house. After hearing this, the leader was in a good mood, as if he was shouting a piece of ice in the hottest days of the year. His whole body was icy cold. The few of them talked about everything and flattered the leader. After a quarter of an hour, the 3 attendants from before still hadn't returned. Of course, they couldn't come back. The 3 attendants were experienced in surviving in the wilderness, but compared to Jiang Pengji, they paled in comparison. She quickly found the nearest water source and laid in ambush, waiting for the 3 prey to take the bait. Soon, the 3 figures came together. One of them said in surprise, "There is water here. You're the best. Don't talk anymore. Fill the water bags first." The three of them were carrying many empty leather water bags. If they were to fill all of them and bring them back, the weight would not be light. Jiang Pengji looked at them coldly and squatted down beside the pool. She steadily raised the bow in her hand. She took out 2 arrows from the quiver and quickly drew the bow to a full moon. Swoosh, swoosh. The 2 arrows sank into the brains of the 2 attendants, piercing through the back of their heads. They were instantly killed. The third person was originally seriously filling the water bag with water. Suddenly, he noticed that the surface of the water beside him was dyed red with eye-catching blood. He was slightly stunned. The 2 companions who were talking and laughing with him just a second ago opened their eyes wide in disbelief and fell head first into the pool. Enemy attack. 2 words suddenly popped up in the mind of the third person. The water bag in his hand fell to the ground and wet the soil by the shore. He jumped up abruptly and pulled out the broadsword from his waist. He vigilantly looked around. Following the direction of the arrows, he did not see any traces of anyone. How many enemies were there? Where were they? For a moment, these 2 questions popped up in his mind. The more he thought about it, the more nervous he became. He tensed up and stayed on guard for a long time. Still, no one attacked him. It was as if the 2 arrows that killed his companions appeared out of thin air. The person looked at the bodies of his 2 companions and nervously pursed his lips. Then, he gritted his teeth and staggered away. Yichengzhou. Host, you let them go just like that? Letting a tiger return to the mountain will cause endless trouble. Gumiai. Although I think killing is very bloody, the host situation is a special case. You can't generalize. Letting the enemy go is harsher to yourself. That person went to inform the others and called everyone over. Can the host deal with so many people alone? Muyu Qingfeng, I want to convince myself that the host can kill more than 20 people, but the host is still a bean sprout, right? Lu Lanting's body was only 12 years old. Compared to the burly men who were 7 feet tall, she was as petite as a white rabbit. Just the difference in physique alone made the viewers in the streaming room nervous. They could not help but break out in cold sweat for Jiang Pengji. Jiang Pengji did not care about the fish that escaped the net. Naturally, her target was not just 2 people. Chapter 193. Host V. Don't worry. Letting 1 fish go is just to attract more stupid fish. She sneered, leaped up, and landed on the dense tree trunk. Her footsteps were light as she walked away. The enemy was in the light while she was in the dark. She always had the initiative. Thanks to the high mountains and deep forests in Hejian County, it was very convenient to hide. Besides, Jiang Pengji knew how not to leave any traces. She shuttled through the forest freely like a dragon in the sea. Bad news. Bad news. Leader, there's an enemy attack. The surviving follower ran towards the crowd in a panic. He almost couldn't catch his breath. His lips were pale, and he kept muttering, "Enemy attack. 2 of our brothers were killed just now." What? Enemy attack? And 2 of our men were killed? The leader suddenly stood up from the small stool, took 2 steps forward, approached the surviving follower, and said sternly, "What enemy attack?" The follower gasped for a while and finally could barely tell. "Just now I was fetching water with the other 2. Suddenly, 2 black figures flashed by and attacked us with arrows. We were careless, and the other 2 were shot in the head and they died." Died? The leader's eyes widened in disbelief, and then he became violent. The people he brought were killed by a sneak attack outside. It must have been done by the bandits near Hejian County. They were really bold. Then you came back just like that. The surviving follower's eyes were red, and he said in a tearful voice, "Leader, I also want to fight those 2 beasts to avenge my brother, but I still have to save my life, so I came to report to my brothers. My brother's life can't be lost in vain. If others were to find out that our Meng family army was ambushed and killed by 2 bandits, where would we put our faces?" The leader listened with a gloomy face, and his hands clenched into fists. He suddenly took out his whip, and he was full of anger. These mobs have gone too far. The leader gritted his teeth, and then he ordered 20 people. "Let's go to avenge our brothers." Jiang Pengji's 5 senses were no longer suppressed, and she could hear their conversation from this distance. She couldn't help but laugh. The audience in the streaming room could also clearly hear their conversation with the help of the system. Suddenly, there was a sea of 2,333. Gu Mimi. You have a big imagination. You said it as if you saw it with your own eyes. He doesn't even know where the streamer is, and he said he saw 2 black figures. Is it just because the streamer shot 2 arrows at once? That's ridiculous. Lao Ciji Lianming. If the streamer makes 3 consecutive kills later, shouldn't they say that there were 5 people who attacked them? Mu Yu Qing Feng. They have to say that. If they don't make the situation more dangerous, how can they explain that they were so scared that they peed their pants, and left their brothers' bodies, and ran away? He was still too young. If he was a little more thick-skinned, he might have directly bragged that there was a platoon of bandits watching him, that he was skilled in martial arts, and that he had broken through the encirclement left and right, and finally escaped. Everybody lift chestnut together. Ha ha ha, I'm impressed by the comment above. Zhang Pengji waited in a good mood. Although she was not used to using ancient bows and arrows, it was the same as a sniper. Compared with a sniper, she preferred to move from one place to another after shooting. Bows and arrows could not be compared with a sniper rifle. The former's speed and destructive power were too small. Squatting in the same place was simply telling the enemy where she was. Host V. Lao Ciji Lianming, I think your suggestion is acceptable. Jiang Pengji drew 3 arrows from the quiver, raised the bowstring to a full moon, and did not move. She squinted her sharp eyes, waiting for the best opportunity. There were 5 people left to guard the horses and luggage. They seemed to be standing loosely, but they were actually very alert. The young man who had survived was left behind. He ran in a panic and accidentally fell twice. He looked very embarrassed. His companion comforted him. Look at you. 2 bandits scared you so much. Look, hasn't the leader already brought people over? If the leader goes out, not to mention 2 bandits, even an entire bandit stronghold will be wiped out by him. The surviving follower was still shivering. His forehead was stained with 2 pieces of mud. Blood mixed with the mud. He smiled reluctantly and was about to look up to thank her when a shadow blocked the sun above his head. The next second, a warm weight fell on him, catching him off guard. Warm, scarlet blood dripped onto his face and almost into his eyes. Whoosh! Jiang Pengji could not shoot 2 arrows at the same time because of her position. It was difficult to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, so she shot continuously at a very fast speed. Enemy, enemy, enemy attack! The attendant raised his hand and pushed away his companion, whose brain had been pierced through. His vision was restored, but there were 4 more corpses around him. Before they could react, they had already passed away. The horse that was quietly nibbling on the grass did not panic at all, nor was it frightened. It was as if the 4 arrows that took their lives just flew out of thin air, without a trace of murderous intent. Jiang Pengji glanced at the follower's almost collapsed expression with satisfaction. Her eyes darkened, and she turned back to the previous pool. At that moment, the leader had brought people to the pool where the incident happened. 2 bodies were floating alone, blood stained the water, and the 2 arrows that had pierced through their brains were still hanging on them. The leader's face darkened and he asked people to go forward and fish up the bodies. He raised his hand and pulled out one of the arrows, not caring about the colorful liquid splashed on his body. He turned the arrow over and did not see any special personal marks on it. It seemed that it was really done by bandits? The leader pondered and said, "Go check around and see if there are any traces of other people's activities." After a search, the result was regrettable. It seemed that the 2 people who attacked them were ghosts without feet. There were no other footprints or traces of other people's activities on the ground. The leader did not believe it and went to check for himself. It was true. At that moment, someone could not help but murmur in his heart. They said they saw 2 shadows. Could it be ghosts? Shut up. How could there be ghosts in broad daylight? Although someone refuted, everyone was still a little scared. At that moment, a cold wind blew through the forest, making their scalps numb. "Leader, we can't find any evidence here, and there are no traces of other bandits. Should we continue to search?" The leader broke an arrow. It seemed that he could not understand why there was no trace at all. How did the other party do it? Ghosts? Haha, only mediocre people would believe that. The leader did not give up and checked again. In the end, he had no choice but to go back. A total of 28 horses were still in their original place. If they were robbed at that time, they would suffer a loss. Wait. Chapter 194. Just as he finished speaking, an arrow pierced through the air, directly piercing through the chest of a person who was standing relatively far away. Ugh! A muffled sound rang out, and everyone looked towards the source of the sound, just in time to see the man raising his hand to cover his chest, a look of disbelief on his face. They saw his burly body slowly fall backwards, blood flowing out from his completely shattered heart, staining the ground red. Before he died, his eyes were still wide open as if he had seen a malicious ghost. The scene was creepy. Could it be that there were really malicious ghosts in the forest? Don't panic. You are a man. Why are you afraid of ghosts? The leader shouted, which brought everyone back to their senses. He raised his sword and walked a few steps toward the direction where the arrow came from with a gloomy face. The grass and shrubs could not withstand the sharpness of the sword and were chopped down to the ground. No. Still no trace. Where was the ambusher hiding? The leader looked at the ground where there was no trace of a living person. His expression was like a wall with a few cracks. Ah! Another scream was heard. Another man was pierced through the chest by an unknown arrow. The direction of the arrow was far away from the leader. The leader hurried back and saw that the man was dead. Just like the previous man, he was shot in the heart and died. He checked the wound and could no longer control his violent emotions. Since he began to work for the Mengs, he was used to being flattered and flattered. When had he ever been humiliated like this? He was toyed with by a bunch of nobodies who came out of nowhere. What was even more hateful was that the other party had never revealed themselves from the beginning to the end. Playing tricks on us. We don't need to be afraid of them. The leader stood up and said to the others, "Are you all stupid? They pointed their arrows at you and you didn't feel it at all. You are still standing in twos and threes." The leader's scolding made the others tremble. They did not dare to be so careless and spread out in twos and threes. Instead, they formed a more orderly formation. Compared to the unknown malicious ghost, the leader was more terrifying. Seeing that, Jiang Pengji had already quietly moved to another place. How stupid. It doesn't feel challenging at all. Jiang Pengji smiled. The enemy was in the light while she was in the dark. She had the initiative in her hands. Regardless of whether the enemy gathered in a group or dispersed in twos or threes, it was all useless unless they could feel her breath or detect her murderous actions in advance. Killing aura seemed illusory, but it really existed. It was just that it couldn't be touched or seen. Some martial artists worked hard to train themselves and improve their five senses. They would vaguely develop a mysterious intuition. When others stared at them, they would feel it, not to mention the killing intent that was filled with malice. The leader was indeed capable. His five senses had also reached such a level that he could sense the killing intent and stares of others. However, how could Jiang Pengji's standard be the same as theirs? A genetic warrior whose killing intent could be sensed by others was already the worst of the worst. It was simply impossible for him to participate in a mission. Jiang Pengji also had rich experience in sniping and killing. She succeeded every time. If she could not perfectly restrain this killing intent and reduce her presence by 100%, according to the five senses of the people in the future, it would not be called a sneak attack. It would be telling the enemy her position and trying to kill them. Then what was there to play? The audience in the streaming room was watching excitedly. It seemed that after the shock of seeing blood for the first time, they had calmed down. Wanyue. #laughter cry. I have a déjà vu of a high-level golden godly outfit massacring the novice players in the novice village. Xueqi. It's obviously a godly character who has ascended to immortality. Zhongfei Xingchen of last night. It's better to be crushed. It feels good. I like the feeling of killing a bunch of small monsters with one slash. Jiang Pengji curled her lips. Huddling together would only make them die more quickly. Host V. I'll show you what it means to kill two birds with one stone. As soon as she finished speaking, the arrow had already pierced through the air. Jiang Pengji changed to another place without looking back. Swoosh! An arrow pierced through the air. The crowd only noticed its existence when it got close, but it was too late. Another two. Jiang Pengji did not have to look to know that she had taken down two more enemies. At that moment, the number of casualties had reached a terrifying number. They did not see the shadow of the ambushers from beginning to end, but their companions fell one after another. The leader was safe and sound in the middle, but the two people who had been killed were very close to him. They fell in the direction of the leader. With such archery skills, they can't be bandits. The leader pushed the body that fell on him away. A trace of unwillingness flashed across his face. However, he also knew that if they continued to stay in the dense forest, they would only silently lose more people. Could it be the people in Hejin County seeking revenge? One of the followers guessed with fear. The leader snorted coldly and said contemptuously, "Those people don't have the guts to. If this was not the case, that was not the case." Then who was the culprit? Could it be that a malicious ghost really appeared in broad daylight? For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic. Seeing them retreat and then looking at the reserves in the quiver, Jiang Pengji's smile was somewhat evil. Since they had already set foot on the road to hell, how could they escape? It was not difficult for Jiang Pengji to shoot while moving. The only difficulty was that she had to pay attention to hiding while moving. The atmosphere became more terrifying and gloomy. The tense atmosphere and the shadow of death shrouded everyone's hearts. Dong, the head of one of the followers who fell at the back of the group, was pierced through from the temple by an arrow. He was directly nailed to a tree trunk not far away. "What are you panicking for? Retreat!" The leader heard the strange sound at the back of the group. His heart suddenly sank. He knew that another life had been quietly taken. The same scene happened one after another. Jiang Pengji was like the most experienced hunter. It was as if she had thoroughly understood the dense forest. No matter how the group of people ran or panicked, she could maintain a fairly safe range. She was like an experienced cat, and those people were the mice that she chased. She destroyed their psychological defenses bit by bit. When she was done playing with them, she would kill them with one blow. The leader was about to have a nervous breakdown after being shot one after another. Even though he looked calm on the surface, he still could not hide the guilt in his heart. Yes, guilt. He couldn't sense where the arrows were coming from, and he didn't know what their target was. Chapter 195. No way. It couldn't go on like this. The only way was to leave the dense forest and go to an open area. When there was nothing to hide behind, he wanted to see how the enemy would attack. In this regard, Jiang Pengji could clearly tell the enemy that those who deserved to die would still die. It had little to do with where they died. It was not easy to escape from the dense forest. Originally, he had brought 20 followers with him, but now there were only 2 left. The closer they got to the exit of the dense forest, the more frequently Jiang Pengji shot. Seeing that they had escaped, any normal person would feel relaxed. It was also the best opportunity to attack. However, when the leader brought the remaining 2 survivors to the place where they had rested, what they saw were 4 bodies lying in a pool of blood. The leader's eyes were wide open, and his fierce look scared the 2 followers who followed him. The only survivor was the follower who had gone to fetch water and was lucky enough to survive. Why? Of the 5 people who stayed, 4 were dead, and only this one was alive? Of the 3 people who went to fetch water, 2 were dead, and only this one was alive? The anger in the leader's heart could no longer be suppressed. He strode forward and grabbed the follower's collar. "Tell me, did you kill them? Tell me, are you a spy for those villains? Did you deliberately lure us there?" The leader glared at the follower, who had been scared to the point of delirium. His face was smeared with sticky blood. The audience in the streaming room was speechless. Wait, what kind of weird development was this? Why did they suddenly have internal strife? No, internal strife was internal strife. Why did they suspect that the unlucky guy who had been scared twice by the streamer was the murderer? Feng Zhilaoan, ha ha ha, I feel sorry for him. First, he was scared twice by the streamer, and now he's suspected to be the murderer. Shuang Xiang. Sorry, really very sorry. No, I laughed so hard that my stomach hurts. Did the leader become a stick? Lao Siji Lianming. I bet a spicy stick. This is definitely an Easter egg left by the streamer on purpose to test their intelligence. It was no wonder that the viewers in the live streaming channel were so happy. This turn of events had shocked everyone. The followers around the leader were all brought here by himself. He knew everyone's background, so it was impossible for there to be a spy. Of course, it was also possible under extreme circumstances. Some viewers in the live stream room were mocking him, but naturally, there were also people who had different opinions. Chestnut is delicious. Am I the only one who thinks the leader's reaction is normal? After being scared by the streamer so many times, and seeing the people around him die one after another, the psychological pressure was unimaginable. Under such circumstances, it was impossible to maintain a normal level of thinking, and they would definitely subconsciously suspect the most suspicious person. Who was the most suspicious person at the moment? It must be the survivor. Putting himself in their shoes, if he was one of the members of the team, facing a completely clueless enemy, and every time the enemy attacked, one member of the team would definitely die, and no one would know if he or she would be the next target. The fear of death lingered in one's heart. The Grim Reaper's footsteps were hot on one's heels. Even a person with a strong mental defense would collapse in an instant under such a dense frequency of attacks. However, from God's perspective, the leader's judgment was indeed laughable. At this time, the audience in the live broadcast room was silent, and then they agreed to speak. Not to mention anything else, they just said that the host had too much bad taste. Zhang Pengji smiled. Her bad taste was yet to come. Tell me, did you kill them? Tell me. The leader grabbed the other's collar and roared as he questioned. At the same time, Zhang Pengji steadily raised the bow, drew an arrow, and aimed at the target. Swoosh! In the next moment, blood burst out and covered his face. His neck seemed to be strangled by an invisible hand, and it forcibly stopped him from speaking. That's bad taste. Zhang Pengji snorted coldly, and another wave of 666 flew by in the live broadcast room. My host, you're amazing. Zhang Pengji was too lazy to struggle with the last few shrimps. She raised her hand, put her finger to her lips, and whistled. The horse neighed, and the sound of hooves came from afar. A vigorous white figure galloped out of the dense forest. The other horses seemed to be summoned, and they all ran toward the white horse. The scene was chaotic. Game over. Zhang Pengji drew her bow for the last time, and killed 2 birds with 1 stone. She took the lives of the 2 people beside the leader. She had said that 1 messenger was enough. Let's go. Pack up and go home. The white horse galloped toward her. Zhang Pengji smiled, ran 2 steps forward, and jumped on the horse's back. The pure-blooded warhorse of the northern borderline was indeed worthy of its reputation. Only then did the leader see who had ambushed them. Just as he was about to draw his bow and shoot an arrow, the horse galloped wildly, kicking up a cloud of dust and blocking his line of sight. All he could see was the buttocks of the horse and the small figure that had already become a small dot in the distance. Humph! The leader was so angry that he threw the bow and arrow in his hand to the ground. None of the 27 followers around him survived. Who is it? That's too much. The leader spat out these words through gritted teeth, and a smell of iron spread in his mouth. The only thing he could be thankful for was that his horse had a good relationship with him, and it was not affected by the white horse. Otherwise, he would have to walk to the next station with an empty stomach. In the future, I will take revenge. Zhang Pengji did not care whether he wanted to take revenge or not. Even his life was deliberately spared. If it were not for the messenger, he would have died and gone to hell to show off his arrogance to the king of hell. Zhang Pengji hung up the bow and put the quiver back. She leisurely sat on the horse's back and let the white horse walk around as it pleased. She led a group of brothers to look for food. The horses were intimidated by the white horse's imposing manner, so they all became obedient. It seems that you are the king of horses. Zhang Pengji saw that and patted the horse's neck with a smile. The horse responded with a loud snort. Its beautiful and smooth mane swayed slightly with its movements, brushing against her wrist and making her feel a little itchy. What a proud little girl. Yes, it was a mare, but it was more hot-tempered than any stallion. It liked to kick its hooves at the slightest provocation. Zhang Pengji carefully counted the number of horses. There were exactly 27 of them. Host V. This is a big win. It seems that robbing the enemy to help me is good for my health. What do you mean by robbing the enemy to help me? Host, your worldview has fallen to the ground. Do you want to bend down and pick it up? The viewers in the streaming room said that they had lived for a long time, but they liked Zhang Pengji's carefree and unrestrained behavior. So, their worldview had been led astray by the host. Chapter 196. Zhang Pengji jumped down from the horse's back. The white horse was very understanding. It rubbed her cheek affectionately and then ran to the side to nibble on the grass. I wonder when I can eat pears. Looking at the pear trees by the banks of the Xueqi River, Jiang Pengji took a deep breath. Her nose was filled with the fresh fragrance of pears. At this time, no one was holding a gathering on the bank of the Yi River, so there was no one on the bank at all, except for the constantly moving horse butts. Jiang Pengji walked straight to the shore. She kicked off her wooden clogs and took off her socks. She dipped her feet into the water and sighed. A cool feeling spread from the tip of her toes to the rest of her body. Jiang Pengji placed her hands on the stones by the river and leaned back slightly to look at the sky. Shu loves lowly. I was quietly lurking, but the host's feet blew me out. Lao Siji Lianming. I think this is today's benefit. The foot control group is blessed. Lu Shi was, after all, a spoiled child. Whether it was riding a horse, shooting a gun, or running, his skin was always a little delicate. Now, his feet had a few red blisters, burning hot. When he touched the cold river water, he shivered in comfort. Looks like I still need to practice more. It's not good to get blisters so easily. Jiang Pengji was bored. She used the tip of her foot to stir up ripples on the surface of the water. When the blisters were no longer so hot and uncomfortable, she prepared to go ashore. However, before she could pull her feet out of the water, she found a tall young man in a lake blue scholarly robe standing not far away. He looked to be about 18 or 19 years old, with skin as delicate as flawless porcelain, bright eyes, red lips, and white teeth. His thin, moderately thick lips were curved. This was a face that easily gave people a good impression. It seemed that he was smiling at everyone. However, at this moment, the young man pursed his lips tightly with a hint of anger. The bunch of people in the live streaming room who were obsessed with looks started to shout again, and all kinds of flattering comments flooded the bullet screen. Durian-flavored milk. I can't take it anymore. I can't take it anymore. What a beautiful young man. Ah! Although I know that ancient times were very cruel and dangerous, the moment I saw this young man, all those hardships go to hell. Ko Jiaoqi fan. I'm not convinced. Why were the ancient people so good-looking? Didn't they all say that they were ugly? Host Zhangxing Shanghua. Although the host is my true love, the moment I saw the young man, I wanted to climb the wall. Such bullet screens almost blocked Jiang Pengji's vision. In the end, she had no choice but to block some of them. Jiang Pengji looked around and confirmed that there was no one else but her. Did that mean that the young man was angry at her? The young man's porcelain-like face showed a little anger. He looked at her accusingly, as if she had done something infuriating. No. What else had she done other than soaking her feet and raising more than 20 horses? Could it be that those free-range horses went to take advantage of him? Just as he was puzzled, a bullet screen in the live broadcast room inspired him. Xueqi. Haha, by the way, is that handsome young man drinking water downstream? It seemed that he was quite angry. Jiang Pengji was speechless. She lowered her head to look at her feet that were still soaking in the water. She then raised her head to look at the young man's almost red face. She was speechless. She was to blame? She calmly put on her socks and wooden clogs. Jiang Pengji whistled and the big white horse galloped over. Behind it, there were a total of 27 well-proportioned horses of different colors. Obviously, the big white horse had become the leader of the horses. Jiang Pengji didn't even need to deliberately drive it. Jiang Pengji murmured, "Nowadays, horses are becoming intelligent." She sat on the horse and glanced at the young man who was still standing in the same place. She moved the reins and signaled the big white horse to go over. Jiang Pengji sat on the horse and bowed to the young man. "May I know your name?" The young man was very tall, but he was still a head shorter than the big white horse. When the big white horse lowered its head and snorted at him, the young man hurriedly stepped back with a bit of panic on his face. Seeing that, Jiang Pengji patted the horse's neck and signaled the little girl not to bully him on purpose. "Judging from your clothes, you don't look like a local." The young man calmed down and looked at her with mixed feelings. After a while he bowed back and said, "I'm from Langyi. You can call me Han Yu." Han Yu? What about his courtesy name? Jiang Pengji subconsciously thought of this question. After all, the ancient people's naming habits were really annoying. But then she remembered that only close friends or elders could use courtesy names. She narrowed her eyes and asked, "My name is Lu Shi. I'm a local of Hejian. I saw you staring at me just now. Do you have any difficulties?" The young man's face became even uglier when he heard the question. Jiang Pengji laughed in her heart. The audience in the streaming room complained that she was too mean. Han Yu was choked by her straightforward question, but he couldn't just say that he just drank some water to quench his thirst. Han Yu's face became even uglier when he thought of that. He had no choice. His water bag was empty and there was still some distance to go into the city. He could only fetch water from the spot. He didn't expect that someone would soak her feet in the water. Should he be glad that she was not using the toilet? Han Yu lowered his head subconsciously and looked at Zhang Pengji's feet, which were wearing socks. He felt a little uncomfortable in his stomach. Zhang Pengji said again, "I was rude just now. My feet hurt a little because of the long journey. I just soaked my feet for a while and found that you were looking at me like that. I thought that the horses around me provoked you. Did they do anything to you?" Han Yu's pale face looked much better after hearing that. His white cheeks became rosy again. "The horses didn't make fun of me. Are they war horses?" Han Yu said. He glanced at the horses that Zhang Pengji mentioned. He seemed to find something and his pupils slightly shrank. "I don't know if they are war horses, but they are definitely good horses." Zhang Pengji smiled and stroked the mane of the big white horse. The horse rubbed against her palm intimately and licked it from time to time. "I took Whitey out for 2 laps and let it go to find food by itself. I didn't expect that it would bring back so many horses. I was also very surprised." Han Yu was very surprised. He looked at the big white horse with sparkling eyes and said, "This horse has a well-proportioned body and strong hooves. Its eyes are full of intelligence and it has a ferociousness that normal horses don't have. Is this a good horse from the northern borderline?" "It should be. My father specially sent it to me. It is said that it is a good horse that was carefully selected from the royal horse farm in the northern borderline." Zhang Pengji said, "I don't know much about horses, but Whitey is full of intelligence. It seems that it can understand what I said. In the whole family, I am the only one who is close to it." Zhang Pengji's words were really shameless. Chapter 197. Compared to the white horse, Han Yu was more concerned about the other 27 horses. They were from the Meng's horse farm. Horses of such quality were usually provided to the Meng's army. Outsiders couldn't buy them. Now there were 27 more horses, which made Han Yu feel a little uneasy. So, Han Yu asked, "Do you know who the owner of these horses is?" Zhang Pengji sneered. She never asked for the names of people she killed, and there was no need to. They were all dead anyway. But she said, "I don't know. Do you know?" Han Yu said with certainty, "This is a fine horse from the stable of the Mengs in Songzhou. Only those with a high status in the Meng's army are qualified to own such a fine horse." "Lu Langjun is in trouble," Zhang Pengji said carelessly. "Why?" "It's just a few animals carrying people. How can they kill people?" Han Yu didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He suddenly put on a serious face and said, "Not only will they kill people, but they will also implicate the whole family." "Is it that serious?" Han Yu saw that she didn't believe him, so he explained the stakes to her very seriously. "Don't doubt me, Lu Langjun. There was a tragedy in Meng County in Songzhou. Someone stole a horse belonging to the Mengs, and the whole family was involved. They were trampled to death on the horse farm. I didn't steal these horses. They came here by themselves." Zhang Pengji said seriously, "But what you said reminds me of one thing. These horses are indeed easy to get into trouble. I have to find a way to get rid of them as soon as possible." Han Yu was speechless. Zhang Pengji smiled coldly. "Langjun, you said that I'm a thief. Since I've already taken the blame, why don't I just sell all the horses and make some money? No matter how angry the Mengs are, they have to find me first." Han Yu was alert and smart. He immediately understood why Zhang Pengji's attitude toward him had changed so much. He immediately apologized. "You don't have to be so angry, Lu Langjun. I used that tragedy as an example to tell you to think twice before you act. The Meng family is powerful and arrogant. Ordinary people can't fight against them. I have no intention of slandering you for stealing." Zhang Pengji tightened her grip on the horse's belly and the white horse took 2 steps forward. She said proudly, "It doesn't matter. Since I dared to accept these troublesome little fellows, I naturally have my own reasons." Seeing her like this, Han Yu didn't continue to insist. Maybe she really had the right to be arrogant, and he would only annoy her if he tried to dissuade her. The two of them had only met by chance, and there was a misunderstanding at the beginning. Naturally, there was nothing much to talk about, and they soon parted ways. The live stream viewers felt that it was a pity. It was rare to see such a handsome, sunny boy. It would be a pity if they did not lick his boots for a while. To avoid encountering people who knew about horses, Jiang Pengji took a shortcut and leisurely let the white horse carry her to the farm. Wow, what a big horse! So high! The children in the village had never seen so many horses. A bunch of naughty children came forward, their faces full of curiosity. Everyone wanted to reach out and touch the horse's hooves, but Jiang Pengji didn't allow it. War horses were hot-tempered. If they accidentally angered one of them, they would lose their lives if they were rewarded with a hoof. Lang Jun. These... Jiang Pengji jumped off the horse. Xiaoyu, you came just in time. Ask Coach Meng to bring the horses into the farm. Remember to tie them all up. Xueqi thought that was not the point. The point was, didn't Lang Jun always say that he was very poor, and that he needed to be thrifty here and there, even to the extent of losing his mind? So, where did he get the money to buy so many war horses? Even though Xueqi didn't know much about horses, he still had the basic insight. He didn't know how good the horses were, but he knew that they were indeed excellent. So, where did Lang Jun kill people and set fires? How did he get so many? Xueqi accidentally blurted out what was on his mind. Jiang Pengji tilted her head and stared at him, which made his hair stand on end, as if he was going to explode in the next second. Unexpectedly, Jiang Pengji just nodded seriously and said, Xiaoyu, you know me best. Xueqi was dumbfounded. The viewers in the live stream almost burst out laughing. Although he was not as handsome as Han Yu, Xueqi was still very handsome. Lang Jun, you really killed people and set fires? Xueqi didn't know how to react. However, when he saw Jiang Pengji's half-smile, Xueqi suddenly realized that something was wrong. I killed people, but I didn't set fires, Jiang Pengji said seriously and added, setting fire to the forest is a serious crime. In Jiang Pengji's era, wood resources were scarce. Only the rich and the aristocratic families could afford pure wood furniture. In order to protect the decreasing forest resources, the relevant regulations were introduced. Setting fire to the forest was a serious crime, and it could lead to death. Xueqi heard that and felt slightly relieved. No, he didn't set fire, so he couldn't kill people. At that moment, he carefully counted the number of horses. Minus the one that belonged to his Lang Jun, there were 27 left. 27? Thinking about the number and the killing that his Lang Jun said, he seemed to understand something. Anyway, I took them from the Mengs. It doesn't cost me anything. Jiang Pengji raised her hand and patted Xueqi's shoulder. But the horses raised by the Mengs have special marks. People who know horses can easily recognize them. This is going to be a problem. Before Xueqi could react, Jiang Pengji had already made a decision. Find a way to sell them. They can probably be worth a lot of money. Sell the horses. Xueqi's mind flashed with the approximate market value of the horses. Horses used for transportation were usually not cheap, and a horse like this was worth dozens of times more. But won't it be a pity? Men always had some characteristics that never changed, no matter what time it was. For example, men in Jiang Pengji's era had a special love for mechas. Some people even joked that mechas were men's true love. In this era, men seemed to be like this as well. They had a unique love for strong and healthy horses. Jiang Pengji said, I can keep them, but I don't think it's necessary. I killed those lackeys of the Mengs and only left one alive to report back. If they know that these horses are in my hands. Xueqi was suddenly shocked and immediately sobered up. He was still very rational when it came to his personal interests and interests. If that's the case, we'd better find a way to sell the horses as soon as possible. It's fine even if the price is lower. We can't keep them and cause trouble. Xueqi had already started to calculate in his mind how much money and food the horses could bring them. Yes, but I don't know how to sell them. We'll need to find a slightly more professional person. Jiang Pengji smiled. The Mengs were a jinx to others, but they seemed to be a blessing to her. Chapter 198. According to Zhang Pengji, it would be better to sell the warhorses so that the Mengs wouldn't trace them back to her. Xueqi even started to make a budget, but Meng Hun put forward a different opinion after he heard about it. I don't agree with your decision. The loss is too great. Meng Hun licked his dry lips and looked at the plump and strong warhorses with a burning gaze. For a general, a horse that they liked was like a second companion. It's better to hide them in the mountains for a while and wait for the Mengs to die down before plotting other things. Zhang Pengji focused on the first sentence. How great is the loss? Meng Hun said, for example, a good warhorse like this is worth 70 to 80 taels of silver. That's the price of a fair deal. If you sell it to a horse dealer privately, they will buy it at a much higher price. Usually, they will reduce the price by 40 to 50%. That much? Zhang Pengji asked. That's at least a horse dealer with a conscience. If they bully someone who doesn't know the trade, they will be even worse. Warhorses are different. If they have internal injuries, they will be worthless. That's why they are more expensive. But if they are sold privately, the price will be reduced even more. Meng Hun sighed and raised his hand to stroke the mane of a maroon warhorse. The horse was strong and the muscles under his palm were tight and full of strength. It was fascinating. Xueqi was in a dilemma. It would be a loss if he sold them, but it was too risky to keep them. Even if they were hidden deep in the mountains, they would still be found. Zhang Pengji looked down and thought for a while. I'll listen to you this time. Anyway, we got them out of nowhere. No matter how we deal with them, it won't be a loss. We will need to train riding and shooting in the future. With them, at least we don't have to buy extra horses. It will save us a lot of money. Xueqi asked, but if that's the case, and someone finds their tracks and suspects, Zhang Pengji reacted quickly. When she agreed to Meng Hun's suggestion, she already had a solution in mind. It's not difficult. I originally wanted to move the troops training from the farm to the mountains, Zhang Pengji said. But not now. Find a way to hide these horses. It doesn't matter if they are exposed. The Mengs can't do anything to me. Zhang Pengji smiled innocently as she spoke. After all, I'm just a powerless aristocrat. How could I have ambushed 28 of them, killed 27 of them, and left one alive? Isn't it more believable to say that Meng Hun did it? Xueqi almost couldn't hold back the smile on his face. Before Meng Hun joined the team, you could trick him, but now that he was a friend, you still want to trick him like this? Do you have any shame? What was eye-opening was that Meng Hun actually felt that it made sense. That's true. Ordinary people would definitely think so. Although the young Lang Jun is skilled in martial arts, how could he be compared to the followers of the Meng family? These horses are in your hands. You can say that you bought them from a horse dealer in the black market. What can the Meng family do to you if they want to settle accounts with you? Meng Hun gave a simple and honest smile. If an ordinary person told the Meng family this, he or she would definitely be in trouble. But Zhang Pengji had someone to rely on. It was just 20 horses. The Meng family didn't lack them. What they lacked was an excuse. What they lacked was face. Zhang Pengji's reason was reasonable. Would the Meng family dare to go against the Lu family for 20 horses? If that's the case, these horses can be kept in the mountains. But they are hot-tempered. It's better to find someone who has experience in raising horses, so that they won't get hurt. Zhang Pengji made the final decision. Meng Hun's smile deepened. 27 horses. No matter what, he could at least get one, right? The maroon horse next to him was not bad. Both its appearance and temperament were to his liking. Xueqi saw that and secretly put his hand on his forehead. He had a headache. His Lang Jun killed and robbed people without saying a word. Even though it was the Meng family that was robbed and killed, his Lang Jun was born in a noble family. The Lu family didn't lack anything. Why did his Lang Jun become such a gangster? Meng Hun next to him was the same. He was fine before, but now he seemed to be affected by his Lang Jun. No. How long had it been since they hooked up? The speed of their influence was too fast. Xueqi looked like he had nothing left to live for. He watched Meng Hun call people to take the horses away. The food that these war horses usually eat should be different from that of ordinary horses, right? Meng Hun said, of course. They eat more carefully and more expensive. The veins on Xueqi's forehead bulged. Those horses were all masters who needed to be served. Alas, I hope the books will be sent to the Mengs soon. Otherwise, Lang Jun won't be able to keep them. Xueqi was in charge of the accounts. He knew the financial situation best. They still needed the support of the Lus. The entire troop, including 40 to 50 mouths and 27 horses, was counting on the Mengs. Meng Hun was speechless. One was marked by the company one kept. Maybe Meng Hun was not the only one who had changed. Xueqi had also become more shameless. Their family's Lang Jun was really poisonous. Feng Huayu, you made me look for you so hard. Feng Jin planned to find Jiang Pengji that day. He didn't expect to hear a familiar voice as soon as he got into the carriage. He opened the curtain. Hey, it was an acquaintance. Wenbin? Feng Jin got out of the carriage. The joy of meeting an old friend flashed across his young face. Why are you here? They greeted each other, and Feng Jin welcomed the good-looking young man in a lake blue scholar's robe into the door. I was preparing for the assessment. I wanted to invite you, but I didn't expect your third brother to tell me that you accompanied the fourth prince to Hejian. It's not far, so I took a detour. Maybe I could meet you. I saw you from afar as soon as I entered the city. The young man had a bright smile on his face. He was not as reserved as ordinary people. His eyebrows were full of vitality. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. Wenbin, you came at the right time. Do me a favor. What's wrong? Hanyu raised his eyebrows and smiled. Are you entangled with some passionate girl? They were friends who grew up together and they were the same age. Feng Jin let go of his usual calmness in front of Hanyu. Look at you. You are getting more and more improper. I really don't know how Master Yuanjing taught you. Feng Jin patted Hanyu's shoulder and whispered. The fourth prince likes to hang out in the brothels, but he calls me out every time. I can't stand it. Could it be that the fourth prince is interested in Huayu's beauty? Hanyu had an indescribable expression on his face. Feng Jin coughed and lowered his voice. Of course not. I don't like to go to those brothels. He didn't like to go there, but he was called out to go there. It was okay to refuse him once or twice, but he refused him every time. Even a fool would know something was wrong. Chapter 199. Hanyu raised his eyebrows and teased. So, what do you want me to help you with? He doesn't know you well. If he wants to drive you away, just pretend that you don't understand. Wu Ma Jun went to the brothel every few days to make friends with Lu Shi. He liked to invite Feng Jin along every time. Now that Hanyu was here, Feng Jin had an excuse to get away. You should have just rejected him directly. What can a useless fourth prince do to you? You are just trying to save face, Hanyu said carelessly. Feng Jin was not valued, but he was still the second son of the Feng family. If he didn't want to do something, Wu Ma Jun couldn't force him to do it. Feng Jin smiled bitterly. A leopard couldn't change its spots. It was his nature, and it wasn't easy to change it. Wu Ma Jun was annoying, but Feng Jin didn't want to offend the fourth prince yet. There was no need to make it ugly. Hanyu still had the same temperament. I haven't seen you for a few years. I thought you would be less temperamental after you became Master Yuanjing's disciple. I didn't expect it to get worse. Your temperament is quite similar to the good friend I've made recently. Perhaps the two of you will get along well. Hanyu raised his eyebrows and said with interest, There are not many people who can be praised by you, Feng Huayu. Not to mention that his temperament was similar to his. She is a wonderful person. Feng Jin thought of Jiang Pengji, and the smile on his face became wider. Hanyu was quite surprised. TSK. Could it be that the good friend Huayu is talking about is actually a beautiful lady? Is she your confidant? I think you asked me to help you get rid of the fourth prince, so that you could have some time to meet your confidant. His smile was so sweet that Hanyu felt like he was going to be blinded. Feng Jin's smile became more and more helpless after hearing what Hanyu said. Although his good friend was indeed a woman, she was not a confidant. He didn't know what Hanyu was thinking about. Of course it's not a wife, and it's not a close female friend. It's a good friend. Wenbin can't slander Feng Jin's style just because of his experience. I originally wanted to introduce the two of you to each other, but now that I see that you have a big mouth, I think it's better to forget about it. Feng Jin and Han, you were good friends who grew up together. They were as close as brothers and would occasionally make some harmless jokes. Hey, don't. He must be a rare young talent to be praised by Huayu. I want to get to know him. Only then did Feng Jin let go of Han Yu. If Wenbin had come a little later, I'm afraid I would have gone to find Lanting. Han Yu couldn't help but be interested in the Lanting that Feng Jin had mentioned. He wanted to see what kind of talent Lanting had. As a student of Master Yuan Jing, Han Yu had seen too many young talents who claimed to be gifted by the heavens. One or two of them tried to be Master Yuan Jing's disciples, but what was the result? It was either an exaggeration or an unworthy name. There were only a few people who could catch Han Yu's eye. Han Yu said, "It's not too late to visit now." Feng Jin hesitated for a moment before nodding. All right. Because of the addition of Han Yu, Feng Jin specially wrote a visiting card. Otherwise, it would be too rude to bring someone he didn't know directly to his door. Unfortunately, the concierge told Feng Jin that his Lang Jun had been away for some time. Did Lanting say when he would come back? Feng Jin asked in a good temper. The gatekeeper thought for a moment and said, Lang Jun only said that he would come back before the city gate is locked. Before the city gate is locked? Looking up at the sky, it was obvious that he couldn't wait any longer. If that's the case, I'll have to trouble you to tell Lanting that I've been here. The gatekeeper said respectfully, It's no trouble at all. Lang Jun is my Longjuan's good friend. This is what I should do. Feng Jin had no choice but to return to the carriage. Han Yu was playing with the jade tassel hanging from his waist with his fingers. Are you not at home? Feng Jin nodded. He thought for a moment and said, Since you are here, why don't you go to Yaoji? Yaoji? Another strange name. It seemed that Huayu had made a lot of good friends while he was away from Shangjing. Feng Jin saw the confusion in his eyes and explained, Yaoji is my good friend. Her name is Lu Heng and she is also Lanting's cousin. Han Yu said bluntly, Since I have nothing to do, I might as well go there. Feng Jin shook his head with a bitter smile at Han Yu's attitude. With Wenbin's temperament, if he encountered any setbacks in the future, he would suffer a lot. Jiang Pengji didn't come back until an hour before the city gate was locked. She rode a tall horse and slowly returned to the Lu's house. As soon as she came back, she heard from the gatekeeper that Feng Jin had come to see her. Huayu? Jiang Pengji asked. Did he leave any other message? The gatekeeper thought for a moment and shook his head. Lang Jun only asked me to tell you that he had been here. He didn't say anything else. Oh, I see. Jiang Pengji felt relieved. It seemed that it was a normal visit and he didn't encounter any difficulties. But the gatekeeper hesitated. What? The gatekeeper stammered. The one who often goes with Feng Lang Jun has come to see you again. Jiang Pengji tried not to think too much. What did he mean by always goes with Feng Jin? It felt like there was an affair going on between them. Did you say that Wu Ma Jun came again today? Since the last time at Ingchun House, the frequency of Wu Ma Jun's visits was frighteningly high. But Jiang Pengji often went out, so she didn't run into him. The gatekeeper said awkwardly, Yes, I heard from other servants. He seems to want to marry the second Nyangzi. What? Marry the second Nyangzi of the Lu's house? Jiang Pengji was stunned for a while. Then she remembered that there was a sister who had never shown her face in the Lu's house. However, her stepsister was not even 9 years old this year, right? Didn't Wu Ma Jun want to marry Jingxian? Why did he change his target to his sister of a concubine? Or could it be that this person wanted both of them? Jiang Pengji's eyes turned cold. She pursed her lips and looked extremely unhappy. After returning to the house, she went straight to see Lu Shi. He was reading some documents seriously. Lanting, you're here. Lu Shi put the book aside and smiled. Sit next to me. Jiang Pengji asked directly. Father, what do you mean? If Lu Shi had not hinted or misled Wu Ma Jun, he wouldn't have known that there was a daughter of a mistress in the Lu's house. For some reason, although the siblings were in the house, they were scarily invisible in the eyes of others. It was obvious that someone had done it on purpose. Lu Shi asked, What? There is a rumor in the world that Wu Ma Jun wants to marry my sister. Lu Shi said, It's not a rumor. I did agree to it. Jiang Pengji. Lanting, I swore in front of your mother's grave, Lu Shi said. I won't let those who hurt her and this family live a good life. But my sister, Lucy said meaningfully, I only have your mother in my life. Zhang Pengji suddenly understood. The children in the house were not Lu Shi's biological children? If that was the case, she couldn't help but look at Lu Shi's head. Chapter 200. Father, you mean? My sister. Zhang Pengji withdrew her gaze. She did not want to be too obvious and hurt his dignity as a man. It's just a grudge between the previous generation. I'll tell you in detail when everything is settled. Lu Shi caressed her hair and said gently, You don't have to listen to the intrigues in the backyard. You don't want to dirty your ears and change your temperament. Did you agree to marry my sister to Wuma Jun to avenge my mother? Zhang Pengji asked. At the same time, she was deep in thought. If that was the case, there must be something special about this stepsister's identity. Yes, it's a very important part. Lu Shi's lips curled into a sinister smile. It was as if there was a cold lake deep in his eyes. I wanted to wait a few more years, but Wuma Jun came to me on his own. He must have some ulterior motive. I'd like to see his expression when he finds out the truth. It'll be interesting. She killed Min for her own ambition. She should pay the price. She asked, Who killed my mother? Lu Shi did not answer her. He sighed and said, I told you. It's a grudge between the previous generation. I don't want you to be involved. I know where your ambition lies. The world is vast, and that is your goal. I, your father, will settle the score for your mother. But Zhang Pengji felt that things were not that simple. Lu Shi was hiding an important truth. If you want to do something for your mother, then promise me. As Lu Shi spoke, he leaned forward and whispered in her ear word by word. It was as if he was making a solemn vow. Don't let anyone get their hands on the throne of the world. You can only win. You can't lose. Zhang Pengji's heart skipped a beat. Even though Lu Shi had learned some things from Master Liaochen, it was the first time he told her that she had to win. She asked in a low voice, Will the person who killed my mother fight with me? Lu Shi couldn't give a very clear answer to this question because he didn't know the details. The only thing he could say was, I don't know, but if you want to be the ruler of the world, it won't be wrong. Who cares if she will fight with you? She won't be able to beat you. Just remember today's conversation in your heart. Even if you are talking in your sleep at night, you must not leak even half a word. You must not leak anything. Even though Zhang Pengji didn't mind Lu Shi's serious advice, she had to take it seriously. What's more? Lu Shi smiled sarcastically. How could someone who only knows how to suck up to you compete with you? What could she rely on? Tossing and turning men's bodies, seductively asking for sex. It's the biggest joke in the world. A woman? Zhang Pengji was surprised. She thought Lu Shi wanted to deal with a man. Lu Shi obviously didn't want to talk about this topic anymore. His daughter was too cunning. The more he talked, the more information he would leak. Before the situation became clear, he didn't want to dig up the past. Lu Shi wouldn't be worried if she was getting stronger. But now, it was clear that it was still not in its infancy. It still needed to recuperate and accumulate its foundation. Lu Shi was in no hurry. He had waited for so many years, and he didn't mind waiting longer. As long as he could see that woman's head fall to the ground before he died, everything would be worth it. Your sister's matter is settled then. Lu Shi's voice was calm, but there was a hint of chilling pleasure in it. Zhang Pengji was not a compassionate person. Lu Shi had already hinted that his sister had a special identity. If she continued to speak up for her, it would seem a little stupid. But didn't father say that Wuma Jun and Jingxian? Could it be that he wants to enjoy the bliss of having two wives? Lu Shi said, Let him worry about it. In any case, Wuma Jun would not let his stepsister become his concubine. It was even more impossible for the daughter of the Wei family's first wife to become his concubine. Naturally, Wuma Jun had to cancel the marriage. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to leave Hejian County alive. On one hand, he promised Lu Shi to marry his daughter, but on the other, he wanted to take Wei Jingxian's engagement. Wasn't he courting death? But, Father, Jingxian and I have broken off our engagement. The Wei family is interested in marrying Wuma Jun. Although they didn't say it officially, some well-informed people know about it. Now that Wuma Jun has changed his mind, Doesn't the Wei residents have any objections? Lu Shi was a little surprised. He did not expect his daughter, who had been so insensitive before, to think about this. Don't worry. It's just gossip. The Wei residents did not admit it. They just need to say that others guessed wrongly. Lu Shi smiled and said, "Have you forgotten that there was another person at the gathering other than Wu Ma Jun, who was of equal status and had a brighter future?" "You mean Feng Jin?" Jiang Pengji thought of her good friend. Feng Jin is the second son of the Feng family. His father is the head of the Imperial Secretariat, Feng Ren. He comes from a noble family. Isn't he better than a prince who is not favored and feared by the government? It is said that the daughter of the Wei family should be married to someone of high status. The daughter of the Wei family is barely a match for him. Jiang Pengji did not expect such a plot twist. Will it work? It's in the bag, Lu Shi said calmly. Marriage is about matching two surnames. If it is fated, it will happen naturally. Jiang Pengji was speechless. But you are on good terms with Feng Jin. If he really marries the daughter of the Wei family, it may affect the relationship between you two. No matter how they broke off the engagement, Wei Jingxian would always be labeled as Lu Shi's ex-fiancé. Feng Jin knew that their relationship was pure, but a man's mentality would always be a little stiff. Especially when Feng Jin and Lu Shi had more contact in the future. They would visit each other and Lu Shi would see the married Wei Jingxian. He was afraid that Feng Jin would think too much. Jiang Pengji only wanted to touch her forehead and say, "How overthinking." This was not the era where everyone was gay. Seeing two people of the same sex getting along well, one could speculate that they were in an impure relationship. Lu Shi did not know that Feng Jin had long known that Jiang Pengji was a girl. Anyone who married Wei Jingxian would feel disgusted, but Feng Jin would not. Jiang Pengji said with certainty, "That won't happen. Huayu is not an ordinary man." She was not worried that Feng Jin would feel disgusted, but she was worried that Wei Jingxian would. If the two of them were fated to be husband and wife, she would have to keep a distance from Feng Jin. She could not cause a family conflict, could she? But for now, she did not have to worry too much. Nothing was set in stone yet. Lu Shi praised, "Feng Huayu is indeed not simple." It was a pity that the son of the Feng family was destined to not be on the same path as his daughter. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.